The story begins in a dungeon. Hunters fighting fiercely against a terrifying monster. Breathing heavily, a guy told his teammates that no matter how he thinks about it, the raid is way too hardcore. So he asked when the other guild was coming with reinforcements because, at this rate, someone's gonna die. Someone replied he heard they'd be coming now, but he didn't know. Suddenly, from behind them, a man with a book told everyone to step back. He then activated a spell that sent multiple thorns flying and piercing the monster, making it scream in pain. The hunters were in awe as they saw the popular hunter, the guy with a phone on his head streaming, excitedly told the viewers that the man known as the Hunter of Hunters, Hunter G. Shinbake, had taken over the raid. All the while, someone was watching the stream. The guy wasn't impressed seeing the so-called Hunter of Hunters because he was someone who didn't even come to his son's graduation ceremony. The guy's name is Sung-yeon, and he's the protagonist of this story. With flowers in his hand, a guy asked Sung-yeon if he's alone and where his parents were. Sung-yeon told him they were busy, so they couldn't come. The guy asked if that was really the case, then asked Sung-yeon if he could take a photo for them, and so he took a picture of the guy with his parents. That's right. Sung-yeon's dad is always busy, and his mom is looking after his sister, who's been in a coma for the past 12 years. As he got into the room, he took a pause, then asked his mom why she didn't come to his graduation. His mother apologized and told him he should know why. His sister's body would deteriorate if she didn't keep looking after her. Angered, he lashed out at his mom. It's just one day, and she didn't attend his graduation ceremony. Why does she only ever care about his sister? But then, someone came in and told him he was loud. He was shocked and went silent as he saw his dad, the hunter of all hunters, Ji Shinbake. He asked his dad how he came home so quickly. His dad, with bloodstains and a stern expression, asked Sung-yeon why he was raising his voice at his mom despite being warned not to do so. Sung-yeon, speechless, then rebellious, turned around to leave. His father asked where he was going. He replied loudly, to the training hall. His father told him, still, he had told him time without number that he couldn't become a hunter with such talent, so he should hurry up and give up on being a hunter. Sung-yeon gritted his teeth angrily, then left. Sometime later at the training hall, Sung-yeon was sparring with a guy, their swords clashing. The guy, whose name is Lee Ju-young, an active hunter and owner of the training hall, told Sung-yeon that he's pretty intense today. Sung-yeon didn't say anything, then went for another clash. He gritted his teeth, then immediately leaped backward, which surprised Ju-young. He then activated his spell and shot an iron chain imbued with mana at Ju-young, entangling his sword. He thought he had won, but Ju-young activated his energy and broke the chain with just a light swing of his sword, which Sung-yeon never expected. Still surprised, Ju-young immediately went in for a counterattack and knocked Sung-yeon down with his wooden sword. With a grin, he told Sung-yeon his attacks would have worked this time if his chains weren't so damn weak. So how about him just not using his power? Sung-yeon couldn't say anything but angrily gritted his teeth. A few minutes later, in Meggy Diner, Ju-young and Sung-yeon were eating. Ju-young told Sung-yeon not to be so angry, since he had been treating him to the same black noodles all the time. Sung-yeon remarked it doesn't feel great to eat at the expense of someone who's short on money himself, then told Ju-young they should practice one more time after their meal. Ju-young was surprised Sung-yeon wanted to practice again, so he told Sung-yeon he was going to upset his stomach. Since his Hunter Academy entrance exam was already over, he told him to take a break until he got the results. Sung-yeon shouted no. The other competitors have multiple abilities or are returnees. They shoot fire and break walls, which is insane. But with his shitty skills, there's no way he can become a hunter. If he wants his dad to acknowledge him, he can't just keep resting at home. Ju-young was speechless as he listened to Sung-yeon vent, then told him that's even more reason for him not to train. His home and family should be the place where he's the most at peace. If his home is no longer comfortable, he won't have anywhere to rely on when he's having a really hard time. Now raining, Sung-yeon left the restaurant. In front of him was a man and a group of other protesters with gloomy expressions. With a microphone, the man was saying vigorously that it's been 100 years since the monsters showed up and decades since monsters started entering their world, disguising themselves as humans who claimed to be returnees that came back from another world, and were deceiving them by saying Earth was their home. But they should know that this is not their home, and they should go back to the hell they came from. Other protesters backed him up, chanting, "Go back to hell." Sung-yeon stood under the rain. A notification then entered his phone. He opened the message, telling him that due to the overwhelming number of applicants, they regretted to inform him that he had not been accepted into the 2026 admission for the Sunggan Academy. They hoped to see him again under better circumstances. Seeing that he had not been accepted, he angrily slammed his phone on the ground flooded with water. He shouted at the protesters, saying, "This place is already hell, so where the hell do they want him to get lost to?" Minutes later, he calmed down, sitting under the rain, speechless. His phone with a broken edge rang. It was a call from his mom. He picked it up and was told shocking news. He got home and was surprised to see his sister awake. The doctors told them her situation was quite shocking. She'd been in a coma for 12 years, yet her condition was really good. His dad was in the room, while his mother was crying tears of joy. She then told Sung-yeon to say hi to his senior sister. Fast forward a bit, Sung-yeon got changed and showered. He was surprised when his mom told him to take turns with her in caring for his sister since she was feeling anxious, so as a family, they had to be by her side. Sung-yeon disagreed, saying he had a lot to do as well. Just because he graduated didn't mean he suddenly had free time. But still, She told him they were still siblings. Sung-yoon lashed out, saying he didn't even remember ever talking to her. His father told him to watch his mouth, but he lashed out at his father, saying his father was not in a position to tell him to watch his mouth, since he had never said good things with his mouth. His sister clenched her fist. With tears in her eyes, she told them to stop. She didn't like the way they were arguing. Sung-yoon was speechless and couldn't say anything. After that, he started spending about 3 days a week at the hospital. His mom seemed to want him to get closer to his senior sister while spending more time with her. But even after that day, he didn't stop training. But he knew training wouldn't make a difference, so he went back to the hospital. He was surprised as he saw the window open, and his sister wasn't in the room. After looking for her for a while, he found her sitting on a bench, thinking. He appeared behind her, which scared her. He told her he had been looking for her everywhere. Why did she just leave without telling him? Flustered, she apologized, saying the room felt suffocating, then asked him if she could stay there for a bit. Sung-yoon couldn't refuse her request, then sat with her while pressing his phone. There was an awkward silence between them. She broke the silence by asking Sung-yoon if he hated her. Sung-yoon wasn't expecting such a question. He asked why she would ask something like that out of the blue. She told him he just seemed scarier now and that he was more like their dad. But she remembered he used to be cuter. Sung-yoon remarked that was him when he was 5 years old. He didn't even remember back then. She told him that was true. Their mom and dad were older now. All her friends had even changed their numbers. And she couldn't even go to school. With tears dripping down her cheeks, she told him it suddenly felt like she was alone in this world. Sung-yoon looked at her, speechless, since he was a typical example of someone who was alone. He asked her what kind of nonsense she was talking about. She had their mom, dad, and him. So how was she alone? She could always make new friends. Just because she couldn't go to school didn't mean she couldn't make friends. He took a pause, surprised as he got enlightened by his own words. He said to himself that going to the academy wasn't the only way to become a hunter. Even Ju-young said he never went to school, so it was too early to give up. She thanked him, then told him they should go back. Thinking about it, Sung-yoon asked her how she got there without a wheelchair. But to his surprise, he saw her floating mid-air. He asked how she did that. Surprised by the question, she told him that while she was asleep, she went to the fairy realm, and she learned it over there. Sung-yoon immediately recalled the words of the protesters he met earlier, and his father telling him he couldn't become a hunter with that kind of talent. He was still shocked even as his sister left, going back to the time when they both were still children. In the playground, their mother was surprised to see them both covered in dirt. Sung-yoon told her they were playing in dirt. His sister also confidently told their mother they did play in dirt, and so their mother carried them home to wash up. Everyone thinks a day like today will happen again tomorrow. However, for anyone, the future is uncharted territory. The happy and childish moments they all spent together as a family were all in the past, when all they could think about was food and what play they should play tomorrow. But one particular night, when she closed her eyes to sleep, a fairy appeared in her dream. She happily told her she had been chosen by their world, so would she like to go and save the world with her? Her eyes glowed with excitement. After that, she spent 6 months in the fairy world before coming back. However, when she returned to her original world, 12 years had passed. As she sat on the bed with some symbols on her eyes and her hair looking weird, her mother was beside her. In front of her were some people in suits. The leader told her mom that he's sure his daughter is indeed a returnee. The bracelets he gave her were supposed to seal the abilities of awakeners, but as she could see, they did not affect a returnee. He then asked Sohyun what the fairies did in the world she went to. She replied, the fairies told her a few things. What she shouldn't do in the fairy world, how to use magic, the knowledge needed to survive, and how to survive the queen. The man, surprised, asked what she meant by the queen. She told him the queen was an extremely bad person, so they said that if she could give the queen a good scolding, she could go home. With a death stare, he asked her if she returned after killing the queen. Flustered, she replied no. She ended up talking to the queen and resolving it. She didn't have any dangerous magic on her. But still, the man told her a returnee's ability is dangerous. All returnees are strong individuals who have saved the other world and returned. In other words, he told her she had a power that exceeded that of an S-class hunter. Moreover, no matter how safe her ability was, the nature of it also changed with her return. Therefore, they hoped her parents could keep her in check, so that she wouldn't use her abilities from now on, and tomorrow a hunter from the bureau would come and watch her. All the while, Sung-yoon was listening from outside. He left as his sister saw him. He recalled the time when his ability was evaluated to be F rank, though his physical abilities were certainly up to par. However, he was not suitable for fighting monsters since the strength and durability of his chain ability were weaker than that of an actual chain, and there were no special abilities embedded within the chain, making its performance inferior to an actual chain. Now, he sat on a chair, speechless and lost in thought. His sister followed him, back to her normal state. With a hearty smile, she asked if he was surprised. If that's the case, there's no need for him to be scared. She's serious. Nothing has changed from the past. Sung-yoon told her to go away. She asked what he meant. He told her again to go away. He wanted to be alone. Surprised, she then worriedly asked why, or if it was because she was a returnee. But Sung-yoon shouted vigorously for her to just go away, leaving her stunned. He stood up and then left. While outside, he recalled her expression. So he wondered what the hell he was doing now. He was so pathetic. On his way, he saw people gathering, so he wondered what was going on and why people were crowding around. To his surprise, he saw his dad at the center of the crowd. Back at the hospital, So-hyun sat, looking out the window with a sad expression. The cute brother she knew in the past was different from the one she was seeing now. She then left the room, floating midair outside the hospital. She then arrived at the park where she and Sung-hyun had the most memories. Seeing how messed up and ruined the place was now, she recalled the past, wanting to go back, tears dripping down her face. She wished so dearly to go back to the time when they were young. Then she noticed someone from behind her, so she immediately went on defense, asking who they were. The guy told her to calm down, they should be the ones asking. He then asked for her identity. He asked her if she knew where this place was. She timidly asked what he meant. The guy explained, telling her this place was closed due to a dungeon break a few years ago, so it was dangerous for poor people to loiter around here. As they approached her slightly, she walked back, telling them she never knew the place was a dungeon. Hearing this, they asked her if she was an outsider, then asked her if they should take her outside. She replied no, it was fine, she remembered the way, she could leave by herself. Then bang, someone slammed her head from behind, immediately knocking her down. The guy who knocked her down told the others she was his since he was the one who got her. The guy asked why he killed her, he shouldn't butt in out of nowhere. But to their surprise, they saw her standing up and alive, though she was bleeding from her head. Seeing she was completely fine, they asked the guy if he was that weak for him not to properly crack open a head. The guy told them it was strange since he hit her so hard. So-hyun, shocked, wondered why he hit her. The guy with the bat then decided to take her down again. But she immediately stood up, telling them not to come any closer. If they did, she was going to shoot. They laughed, saying, "What's the deal with this bitch?" Another added, saying she must be from the mental hospital. She recalled the fairy showing her a magic book she got this time. The fairy told her the magic was called archery, and there was no need to be scared since those who got hit by the arrow wouldn't die. They would also be petrified for a moment. But as she shot the spell, blood splashed, and a big hole was dug into the stomach of the guy she shot. He fell to the ground dead, with blood everywhere. Seeing this, her aura immediately changed from blue to red while she panicked, looking at her hand. Back at the scene where the crowd gathered, Sung-hyun saw his dad carrying a body in his hands. Sung-hyun whispered, questioning, if that wasn't the guy from YouTube, was he dead? His father saw him, and so, some minutes later, the corpse was covered. Standing at a corner, his father asked why he was here, and why he left his sister behind. He timidly replied, couldn't he just take a walk? Seeing his sudden timid expression, his father asked if this was his first time seeing a corpse. He replied, yeah. His father then commented that 4 out of 10 was last year's mortality rate in the hunter industry. 2 out of 10 suffered serious injury, 1 suffered PTSD and stopped being a hunter. There's no exception, whether you are a newbie or a veteran, such is the kind of world hunters live in. So he asked Sung-hyun if he was confident he could survive in this world, but Sung-hyun couldn't reply. His father told him he knew he wasn't confident. After all, that must be the extent of his resolve. Now, on the hospital's road, Sung-hyun was walking, saying to himself that his lacking abilities and the reality of hunters, he tried to refuse acknowledging them. He didn't know anymore, he had no idea what he wanted to do. But as he looked up, he was surprised to see his sister in the air. Her expression darkened, and her aura turned murderous. Surprised, he asked if that was blood on her clothes and if she was hurt. What happened? So-hyun was still in shock, recalling the man from the Hunter Bureau earlier, telling her that a returnee's abilities were dangerous. So she told Sung-hyun not to come any closer. But before he knew what was going on, her energy exploded. As Sung-hyun sat beside a tree, dumbfounded and bleeding from his head, in the background, it was announced that a suspicious person was causing a disturbance outside the building, so they should make sure not to come outside. Sung-hyun shouted at her, is she crazy? What the hell is she doing? So he told her to stop at once, crying and scared. She said she didn't want to. She didn't want to kill him. Her energy immediately went berserk. She screamed in pain as she tried to control it. Hearing the announcement, the police were called, and everyone was told to stay calm inside the building. Sung-hyun became worried since his sister was indiscriminately using her abilities on the street, and such acts called for immediate execution on site. Panic-driven, he wondered what he should do. He decided to alert his dad, but he deemed it not the best choice since the police were faster than his dad. He paused, doubting himself. He looked at the blood on his hand, realizing that he couldn't defeat his sister. So he decided to run away since her actions weren't his fault. But as he was about to leave, his younger self appeared in front of him. Then he heard his sister, crying and scared, saying she hated everything now. She didn't want to do this anymore. Sung-hyun then shouted out to her. He charged forward under her attack with his activated chain. He shouted, telling her to get herself together if she could hear him. Sung-hyun recalled his father's words. He knew that risking his life to save others was what a hunter did, so he shouted out to his sister not to be flustered. He told her there were times when abilities ran wild because of confusion, but if she calmed down, things would be okay. Hearing his words, she wondered why he was going this far for her. But then the fairy appeared in her subconscious, held her hands, and told her to get herself together since she was the hero who saved their world. She disagreed, saying she was only an adult physically. She had no friends, and she was dangerous. She had even killed someone, everyone hated her. But the fairy told her that wasn't true. At least she had never seen someone risk their life to save a person they hated. so she told So-hyun to go back to the place where she belonged. She finally calmed down as Sung-yun hugged her tightly. At the same time, they were surrounded by police. She cried out loudly, just like a baby, which she was. Sung-yun, seeing his younger self, closed his eyes as he believed he could become a better hunter. As they were surrounded by police, a man arrived at the scene. Surprised, he asked his secretary if she saw what Sung-yun did. That incident, the one that happened that night, was eventually resolved by the police. They made it seem like a small disturbance, not even reported on the news, and downplayed it even further. Just then, the warden approached and told So-yun that it was visitation time. As she walked alongside some men in suits, she found herself thinking about the day the police came to arrest her. Her mother had cried so much, and So-hyun wondered what she should say, assuming it was her mother visiting. But when she looked up at her visitor, she was shocked. It was her father, Mr. Gi. Sometime later, they sat down for a conversation. So-hyun was too scared to speak at first, but eventually whispered that she was sorry for what happened and everything that followed. However, Mr. Gi told her that he was there to bail her out today. So-hyun was stunned. She had assumed she would rot in prison for life. After all, she had killed someone. But Mr. G asked if she remembered the woman her mother brought the other day. That woman was an ability user he had hired, someone who could read memories. She had examined the memories of that night's incident and discovered the truth. So-hyun didn't attack first. Mr. G explained that those people had assaulted her first, and she had only used force to protect herself. By law, it was an entirely justified reaction, meaning she couldn't be prosecuted. So-hyun sat frozen, unable to believe what she was hearing. Her father reassured her that this meant she was being released because she hasn't done anything wrong. But she hesitated, saying that someone had died because of her. She had killed someone. Mr. G then revealed the truth. The person she shot hadn't died. So-hyun was in disbelief. How is that possible, she asked. Back then, the trajectory of her arrow had blasted through the man's waist, leaving a hole in his stomach. How could he still be alive? Her father explained that there were many ability users who could treat severe injuries like that, and the boy was likely doing fine by now. He reassured her that she hadn't killed anyone that day, and told her not to torment herself any further. Tears welled up in So-hyun's eyes, and she began crying in relief. She could barely process everything, overwhelmed with emotion. Sometime later, after their conversation ended, a woman in glasses approached Mr. Gi and asked if he was finished talking. When he confirmed, she informed him that they couldn't cover all the damage to the hospital, so he would have to pay a fine. Mr. G sighed in relief. At least it ended with just that, he said, thanking her. She told him not to mention it since they all owed him for the things he had done for them in the past. Then, with a serious expression, she asked if his daughter would be okay when she eventually found out the truth, that the person she fought with had actually died. Mr. Gi's expression darkened. We'll have to hope she's more mentally stable by the time she finds out, he said. But for now, they must keep it a secret from her. The woman then recalled something important and handed Mr. Gi a file. She told him to take it and read the contents. Mr. G frowned, wondering what it was. But as he read the court documents inside, his expression twisted in anger. He slammed the file down, shouting, "Who sent this?" Elsewhere, a man was busy chewing on snacks like someone who hadn't eaten in years. Meanwhile, Sung-yun was training. It was surprising. Someone who has already been discharged from the hospital not long ago. Despite just recovering, he was determined to improve his chain summoning skill. He tested his ability on empty cans, sending his chains flying and slicing them into pieces. Just then, the man munching on snacks sighed as he watched Sung-yun training. Now irritated, Sung-yun turned to him. "What in the world is that guy doing?" he muttered. His friend beside him shrugged. "I have no idea either." Even after they cut off the guy's daily meal ticket, he had been doing that all day. The man continued snacking without a care. He told them not to mind him. They should just do what they are doing, but Sung-yun finally lost his patience. He told the Ajusi to get rid of those snacks. He can't focus with him munching all day. The man looked up, unfazed. "Huh? You can't focus because of me?" "Yes," Sung-yun replied. The man smirked. "So what? Is he gonna say the same thing during real combat? Situations like this are bound to happen. If he gets bothered by this much and can't focus during a fight, then he lacks training." Sung-yun was surprised and asked if the man knew him or something. Why was he picking a fight right from the start? And how would he know how much he had practiced? In an instant, the man sprinted behind Sung-yun and said he understood. He acknowledged the boy's physical abilities and his sense, but his proficiency was terrible. Sung-yun was both surprised and stunned. He didn't even notice the man's presence. When did he get behind him? The man then explained that Sung-yun created those chains using his energy, which meant he had no choice but to keep consuming energy to manipulate them. However, he used too much strength in each of his actions, which made him imprecise. The man activated his own power and said that professionals don't use excessive energy when executing their skills. He pulled out 4 chips from his bag and said, "Just like this. This is how to use your power efficiently." Then bang! He threw the chips and they shattered the cans. Sung-yun was shocked, even his friend was stunned. What an incredible skill. The snacks remained intact, despite hitting a metallic can. Could this guy be a professional? Or an S-rank hunter? The man then told Sung-yun there was one more thing. He said Sungyun didn't even know his true power yet. He brought out a tool, explaining that it was used to summon returnees. He told Ji-hyung to try bringing it close to his chains. The moment he did, a bright light emanated from them. Just as he thought, the man said. He asked if Sungyun remembered what happened back at the hospital. Back then, he was there, he saw everything. The moment Sungyun's hands touched his sister, her powers were extinguished. In other words, Sungyun possessed an unprecedented ability, the power to seal a returnee's abilities. That's the power of his chains, the man stated. He then told Sungyun that simply swinging them aimlessly didn't count as real effort. True effort was about knowing the right approach and understanding one's potential. Sungyun was shocked and asked, "Who exactly are you?" The man replied that he's Chae Ji-hyung, a hunter and a professor at Songhan Hunter Academy. And today, he's here to recruit Sungyun. Sungyun was stunned. Songhan Hunter Academy? But he had already failed the admission test. Ji-hyung told him not to worry about it. Since he had the authority to recommend students, Sungyun's ability alone was enough to qualify him. So, make your decision, he said. Do you want to join the academy? Sungyun didn't hesitate. He exclaimed, yes, he want to go to the Hunter Academy. Ji-hyung smiled. All right, he made the right choice. He then handed Ji-hyung a file and told him, welcome to Songhan Academy. Suddenly, he sensed something approaching. In a split second, he blocked it, swiftly hiding the documents. The person who attacked turned out to be Sungyun's father. Mr. Gi, blazing with aura and rage, he demanded, explain yourself. What is Ji-hyung scheming by recruiting his son into the Hunter Academy? But Ji-hyung glanced at Mr. Gi. Long time no see, you get more wrinkles every time I see you. He then casually advised Mr. Gi to come to the reunions once in a while. At this rate, he'll forget what he looks like. Mr. Gi didn't waver but told him not to change the subject. Answer me, what the hell is this about? Seeing the tense exchange, Sungyun wondered if his father knew who Ji-hyung was. Ji-hyung simply shrugged. He just sent out 2 recommendation letters, that's all. One to Ji So-hyun, a returnee with an ability comparable to an S rank, and another to Sungyun, who has an unprecedented ability. And they are both Mr. Gi's children. But Mr. Gi objected. No. His daughter So-hyun is still an elementary student, she can't adjust to an Hunter Academy. Ji-hyung yelled. Isn't that a good thing he brought it up? You must have heard about it too. So-hyun is a ticking time bomb, and she needed to learn properly at a school with experts who could teach her how to control her powers. But Mr. Gi firmly refused. He said he was more than capable of training his daughter himself. Besides, Sungyun, his son, had no talent whatsoever. He insisted that Sungyun must have realized by now that reckless determination only led to death. Sungyun looked down, his face filled with disappointment. But suddenly, Ji-hyung spoke up. You're wrong. He saw it with his own eyes. Sungyun has what it takes to be a hunter. He threw himself in to save his sister. He has the bravery required. Mr. Gi scoffed. That's not bravery, that's reckless boldness. He then turned to Sungyun. At that moment, did he know exactly what his sister's abilities were? Was he certain about how to subdue her when he charged in? Sungyun hesitated before replying. No, he didn't. But without him, his younger sister would have died. But Mr. Gi continued and said that he's just focusing on the result. He happened to succeed by chance, but that doesn't mean it was something special. He asked if Sungyun plans on gambling with his luck every time he fight. That's the fastest way to get himself killed. Then he turned to Ji-hyung. You're just stringing my son along because you know nothing. A recommendation won't grant him special treatment. Even if he enters the academy, he'll only be left behind and crushed by the competition. Ji-hyung frowned. The top 100 students actually include those who were recommended. He'll be reporting this to the dean because Mr. Gi is tarnishing the academy's image. Mr. Gi smirked. Then send my regards. As they argued, Sungyun wondered why his father was like this. Just once, couldn't his father acknowledge him? Couldn't he say, you saved your little sister? Was that so difficult? His frustration boiled over, and he clenched his fists in anger. Why won't anybody acknowledge anything he do? Just as he was about to snap, his friend held his hand, calming him down. He said, congratulations, Sungyun. Sungyun was surprised and asked, what does he mean? His friend smiled. A professor from Songhan Hunter Academy acknowledged you, didn't they? That means he's closer to his dream now. Don't overthink this, his friend continued. Just keep walking the path you believe in. I trust you, and I trust the path you've chosen. It doesn't matter which one it is, even the one he've walked all this time. He said that Sungyun don't need someone else's approval, especially from someone who knows nothing about him. Hearing this, Mr. Gi's expression darkened. Now he understand. He said he could see why his son is so obsessed with becoming a hunter. His gaze landed on Sungyun's friend. So it was you. You're the one who filled his head with false hope. With a bang, Mr. Gi unleashed his aura. The sheer force sent Sungyun's friend staggering back, but Sungyun quickly stepped in before things escalated. Thanks, he said, looking at his friend. Thanks for standing up for me. Thanks to you, I'm back to my senses. At first, he had only wanted to be like his father. He wanted his father to acknowledge him, to prove that he could be better. He only used to think about pathetic things like that. But that day at the hospital had been different. At that moment, he wasn't pathetic at all. With a serious expression, Sung-yun clenched his fists. He's ready now, he declared. He will become a hunter, even if it means fighting his dad right here, right now. Mr. G's eyes blazed red as he stared at him. So, words aren't enough to get through to his son. He stretched out his hand toward Sung-yun. Seeing this, Sung-yun froze. He thought he was in trouble, that his father would strike him down. But instead, Mr. G patted his shoulder. Give it a shot then. Sung-yun's mind went blank. What? His father wasn't stopping him? He had fully expected a fight. Mr. Githan told him that once he go to Shonghan Hunter Academy he'll realize this isn't the path he should be walking. Then he continued. But he have two conditions. If Sung-yun fail either of them he'll drag him back home. Sung-yun asked, what are they? Mr. G said first he must get into the student council. If he can't do that within a year, that means he's not capable enough. Ji-hyung immediately protested. Isn't that too much to ask of your son? Shut up, Mr. G snapped. Now for his second condition. He said that Sung-yun must protect his sister. Her powers are unstable, and he's not thrilled about this, but he have no choice. She will attend the academy with Sung-yun. Mr. G told him to make sure she does well in school. Same as before, if he fail, he is coming home. Sung-yun clenched his fists. I'll do it, he shouted. With that, Mr. G turned and walked away. Even Sung-yun and his friend were stunned. Did he just leave? Sung-yun muttered. He had been sure his father would kill him right then and there. Just as Mr. Gi was walking down the street, a voice called out to him. It was Ji-hyung who asked if he didn't go too far, telling his son to get into the student council within a year. Student council members are top-class honor students. There's no way an F-ranker like Sung-yun can manage that. But Mr. Gi replied, Sung-yun dared to bring up becoming a hunter in front of him. He should at least be able to do that much. Ji-hyung sighed, letting out a dry laugh. There he goes with his ridiculous standards again. But Mr. G's expression was serious. He never wanted to drag his son onto this path, he admitted. But he recalled the moment Sung-yun had said he wanted to be just like him. That was why he had to let him go. Meanwhile, at the hospital, where So-hyun was receiving treatment, she beamed with joy as she received a letter from Choi Ji-hyung. It was an admission recommendation to Songhan Hunter Academy. Just like that, February, a month filled with excitement and expectations, came to an end. The month of March arrived, bringing change. It was time for the admitted students to head to the academy. They all gathered at the seaport, where a massive ship awaited them. It was their ride to the Hunter Academy. So-hyun's eyes sparkled with excitement as she stared at the enormous vessel. But Sung-yun, he felt neither happy nor sad, because he had no idea what awaited him at the academy. Just as the ship was sailing, a guy looked terrified at the figure he saw in his presence. The whole crowd behind him was running for their lives because someone was attacking them. It turned out to be a hunter causing great damage to the citizens of the area. The little boy yelled, "Isn't this man a hunter? Why is he attacking a citizen? He's supposed to protect them." Just then, the boy woke up. It wasn't just a dream, it felt more like a memory from when he was younger. Now grown up, he was a newly admitted student at Seonghan Hunter Academy, and he was on the same ship that was already sailing. A guy with glasses approached him. "Hey, are you okay? I heard you groaning in your sleep. Are you seasick or what?" The white-haired guy shook his head. "No, he just have a bad sleeping habit." The guy with glasses adjusted his frame and said, "Well, this is first time seeing the guy's face. He must be a new student, right?" Then he said, "He's Sion Purium, a second-year student. They should get along well." The white-haired guy nodded. "All right, my name is Subin. Nice to meet you." Meanwhile, in Sung-yun's room, he and his sister So-hyun looked through his luggage. She furrowed her brows. "Why does he have so many knives and strange things in here?" Sung-yun smirked. He swiped a few useful ones from their dad's drawer. Hearing that, So-hyun gasped. "What? What if their dad gets mad and wants them back?" Sung-yun chuckled. "What does she take their father for? There's no way he'd get pissed off over a few little things." So-hyun glanced out the window and said she's going to check things out a bit. But Sung-yun frowned. "What? Is she going alone? She'll get lost." He told her to just wait for him and they'll go together. She waved him off, saying she'll be fine. Their room is 105 after all. She won't forget. Sung-yun then asked what if some strange person does something bad to her. So-hyun replied, "Then she'll just call him," and with that she left. Sung-yun sighed and said seriously, "It's like he's raising a kid." He exhaled deeply, knowing that what they did from now on was important, especially in the academy. Outside the ship, a guy leaned against the railing, then muttered that a new school term means a series of new encounters. If he befriend capable students, his school life gets easier. Eventually, those friendships turn into useful connections. But then, his aura shifted, and he scoffed. Only a rookie would think like that. He turned his gaze toward Purium and said, "From what I see, you're a rookie." Purium frowned and asked what is he trying to say. The guy smirked. "Getting close to a new student is fine, but next time try bringing a female student instead." Purium was horrified. "Shh, this damn womanizer." The guy sighed and told him to try finding a date this semester. He's already in second year. How long is he going to keep acting like a loser? Purium ignored him and turned to Subin and said, "That guy is Woojin. This is just how he is, a damn womanizer. Subin chuckled, not minding it. Purium then told Woojin, go find yourself a girl instead of asking me to do it for you. Woojin groaned, saying that he'd been scouting for a girlfriend all this time, but he can't find any. Just then, he noticed a girl from a distance feeding seagulls. The girl turned out to be Sohyun. She tossed some food to the birds, but they kept avoiding it. She wondered why did they keep ignoring her. As her bag of chips slipped from her hands, Woojin reacted instantly, catching it before it fell. Sohyun blinked in surprise. Wow, he's fast, thanks. Upon hearing a compliment from a girl, Woojin stood frozen, his mind blank. It had been ages since he'd heard such words. Sohyun tilted her head. What's wrong with you? Woojin said that the snack didn't attract the seagulls, but it seemed to have attracted something else, him. Seeing this, Sohyun was surprised, terrified, and petrified at the same time. She wondered what was up with this guy. Woojin then asked if she was a new student and what her department was. From a distance, Subin wondered if everything was going well with Woojin back there, but Purium said he couldn't see clearly. However, since the girl wasn't running away, it might be going better than last time for Woojin. Still, Subin could tell that whoever Woojin was talking to was terrified, though he didn't think she could run away since they were on a ship. Subin then asked Purium what he meant when he said Woojin was in his second year. Purium explained that Woojin entered last year, but he was still a freshman, just like Subin. Woojin had failed. Songhan Hunter Academy was merciless about failing grades. Many students had failed in this batch, and some had even been expelled, forced to pay hefty tuition fees to get re-enrolled. It seemed like everyone had a lot of money. Subin clenched his teeth in anger as he recalled the hunter who had killed his parents when he was younger. Then, he muttered that he wasn't sure every hunter had good qualifications. Meanwhile, from a distance, Purium noticed Woojin leaving with a girl and wondered where they were going. He then told Subin they should follow them. At room 105, Songyun's room, a knock sounded. Annoyed, Songyun wondered what it was this time. When he opened the door, Sohyun entered, trembling. She quickly claimed that some strange person was harassing her. Woojin was shocked. What? How the hell did he harass her? He asked, realizing that all those expressions he had tried to make hadn't paid off at all. Sohyun continued, saying that the strange guy had asked if she has a boyfriend, and then suddenly started touching her. But in reality, Woojin had only given her a handshake and nothing more. Just outside the room, Purium and Subin wondered where Woojin had gone. Didn't he just entered this room? Just then, the door swung open, and Woojin was sent flying out from a kick. Woojin, sprawled on the floor, called out, "Wait a minute, we can talk about this, my friend." But Songyun was about to land a punch and said, "This is my way of talking, you son of a bitch." Purium quickly intervened, urging him to stop. "Please stop, what has Woojin done this time?" But Woojin insisted he hadn't done anything wrong. Sometime later, after Woojin managed to get up, Songyun finally explained everything. Songyun revealed that his little sister Sohyun had just woken up from a coma after 12 years, so she wasn't used to interacting with people. She could easily mistake simple gestures like a handshake for harassment. Purium, realizing this, muttered, "So she's just a kid if she's only just waking up from a coma." He then immediately hit Woojin and told him to apologize. Woojin sighed and said, "He's sorry." Songyun, however, shook his head. "No, it's all right." He's the one who's sorry for hitting Woojin all of a sudden. Sohyun also apologized, explaining that she had just found the conversation with him awkward. Purium then asked, "By the way, Songyun is 17, right? Then he's the same age as Subin next to him." Subin confirmed, "Yeah, that's true, let's get along." He then introduced himself. After that, they left the room to get some fresh air. Purium asked if Songyun is in the hunter department. Songyun replied, "Yeah." Purium then asked if he had a hunter he liked, but Songyun replied, "Not particularly. Since his dad is one, he's been influenced a bit." Purium paused. "Huh? Is that so?" Then suddenly, something struck him. "Wait, your last name is Gi, right?" By any chance, he asked if Songyun knew Hunter Gi Shinbei. Hearing this, Subin froze. That name, it was the exact hunter who had killed his parents when he was younger and had massacred his village. Songyun replied, "Yeah, he know who Ji Shinbei is, because Ji Shinbei is his father." Purium and Woojin were stunned. They asked if it was really true because Mr. Ji Shinbei was actually one of the strongest hunters in the country. They even admitted to being fans of him. It was shocking to realize that Songyun was his son. But Subin wasn't having any of it. Stunned and furious, he couldn't believe it. The hunter Ji Shinbei who had killed his parents, Songyun was his son. Purium said that Songyun's father was his role model. He had also dreamed of becoming a hunter when he was young. Songyun was surprised and asked if Purium wasn't in the hunter department. Purium replied no. He was in the magical engineering department and only an E rank, so he had no chance of entering the hunter department. Hearing this, Songyun thought to himself, "Well, I'm also an E rank, but he don't need to tell them that. He should just stay calm and keep his cool." Just then, Sohyun smiled and told everyone that her brother had been accepted into the hunter department, even though he was only an F rank. They were all shocked, including Songyun. Purium exclaimed, "What? How? How is that possible?" But Songyun couldn't explain. So-hyun continued blurting out the secret, saying they were recommended for admission. In a panic, Sung-yoon quickly held her head, shaking it gently, and asked, "Didn't I tell you not to tell anyone about the recommended admission?" So-hyun quickly apologized, saying she was sorry, she hadn't realized. Trying to keep his cool, Sung-yoon turned to Purium and said, "Even if you're an E rank, you can still become a hunter as long as you work hard. After all, he somehow managed to end up in the hunter department too, so anyone can do it." Hearing this, Purium sighed in relief and thanked him for the motivation. After the short chat, they all went about their own activities. Some played games while Woojin, as usual, was busy flirting with girls. Sung-yoon walked aimlessly around the ship, sighed, and muttered to himself that he was bored. Soon he noticed Subin looking gloomy as he stared out at the sea. Approaching him, Sung-yoon asked if he was seasick. Subin replied yes, although it was a lie. He was actually still angry that the man who killed his sister was Sung-yoon's father. Subin turned to Sung-yoon and asked, "Why are you trying to become a hunter?" Sung-yoon replied that, as he had said earlier, it was because of his father. Subin shook his head. "No, not that. He's asking about his belief. What kind of mindset does he have to want to be a hunter?" Sung-yoon scratched his head and said he wasn't sure. From a young age, he had just always wanted to become a hunter. He had never really thought about why. Subin said that when he watched the news, he saw people becoming hunters so lightly, just to earn money and get famous. Hunters like that existed. But they didn't realize the heavy responsibilities that came with the benefits. That was why he hated hunters. Sung-yoon then asked, "Then why did you become a hunter?" Subin replied that he wanted to become the kind of hunter who could save everyone. That brought him to his main point. He told Sung-yoon not to come to the Hunter Academy. He should quit before even entering. Sung-yoon was stunned, unable to comprehend what he had just heard. "What do you mean? What are you trying to say?" he asked. Subin told him to stop motivating others, to stop saying they could make it if they worked hard, even if they were E rank. When an ordinary person awakens an ability, it's sheer luck. A rank once determined doesn't change. Moreover, joining the academy requires enormous tuition fees. You need a solid family background. But someone like you, Subin said, has it easy because you have a rich father. That angered Sung-yoon. "You've got a real nasty way of talking," he said. He explained that he ended up in the academy because his ability awakened late. But Subin cut him off, saying awakening had nothing to do with effort. If someone suddenly gained an ability, it only meant they had unknowingly possessed it all along. It's just luck, Subin continued, saying that everything works out if you work hard. Saying that to someone who gave up on their dreams after getting an E rank. That's bluffing. He said Sung-yoon had the same mental age as his little sister. Upon hearing this, Sung-yoon became furious as he called Subin a bastard and moved to punch him. But just as his fist neared Subin's face, the trajectory suddenly shifted mid-air. The punch missed. Sung-yoon was stunned. So-yoon and Purium approached, wondering what was happening between them. But Subin let out a fake laugh, saying Sung-yoon had just fallen over and was fine. So-hyun chuckled that her little brother is so clumsy. But deep down, Sung-yoon couldn't believe what had happened. Just before his punch landed, something strange had altered its path. Subin, with a cold look, said, "People like you who throw punches first will just tarnish the hunter industry. You should listen and give up." As Subin turned to leave, he noticed a chain tied to his leg. Sung-yoon had summoned it and dragged him down. Since Subin said he got here through luck, and that may be true, but now that he's here, he thinks he deserves a shot. Sung-yoon declared that there's no way he's leaving this academy on his own. Subin scoffed. "Even if you stay with that low rank, it'll be hard." "We'll see," Sung-yoon replied. He then proposed a duel, just between them. He told Subin to meet him here at midnight. They should go all out. Later that night, on the ship, they still hadn't reached their destination. So-yoon was asleep with tears in her eyes. Her fairy friend from the other world appeared and assured her that she will never disappear. Someday, surely, they'll meet again. So-hyun awoke, wondering where her brother had gone. She quickly went to look for him around the ship. Just then, a voice called out, "Hey!" Startled, she threw her phone away. It turned out to be Woojin, Purium, and Somi. Woojin asked, "What are you doing here?" So-hyun didn't reply. Instead, she asked, "What are they all doing here? Why are they still awake?" Woojin explained they were heading to another room to play games and asked if she wanted to join. Purium nodded, saying, "Since they'll meet at school anyway, it's a good chance to get to know the others." They asked So-hyun if she wanted to come. Giddy with excitement, she agreed, completely forgetting about her brother Sung-yoon. Moments later, they entered the game room. 3 students were already seated with drinks and snacks. A large guy saw them and said, "There they are, sit down already, let's start the game." My camera then panned to a pink-haired girl. As Woojin saw her, he froze. She seemed to be his ex. Turned around and muttered to himself that something was wrong. Frowning, he thought, they didn't tell him she'd be here. He wouldn't have come. But as they talked, they noticed So-hyun already seated, admiring the snacks in the game. She exclaimed, "There are so many snacks. Can I eat these?" They told her yes. Meanwhile, Woojin, already uncomfortable, tried to avoid the game, but now he was stuck. Mi-jun, the pink-haired girl, told Woojin to hurry up and sit down so they could start. Out of options, he sighed and sat down. "All right, I'm sitting, he said, patting Sohyun on the head. Curious, Mijun asked, who's the new girl? Woojin replied that she's a new friend he've grown close to. Sohyun raised her hand and greeted everyone. Mijun let out a dry smile and greeted her back. After a short pause, Purium looked at Sohyun and asked, by the way, where did Songyun go? Sohyun replied that she didn't know. When she woke up, she couldn't see her brother in the room. Hearing this, Purium said to himself that he also noticed that Subin was missing from their room. He wondered what was going on. He recalled back in the day when Songyun had fallen in front of Subin. Something had felt odd back then too. He wondered if something was going on between those two. Outside the ship, it was raining heavily. Songyun used an umbrella as he walked toward the place where they had planned to fight. He noticed Subin's outfit. Subin was wearing a raincoat. Songyun wondered what the hell was with that outfit. Subin replied that it was a raincoat. Who didn't know that? Songyun then asked if that was how he planned to fight, with a raincoat. Subin shot back, isn't it raining, you idiot? Can't you see that it's raining? He then asked Songyun why he was using an umbrella to fight, pointing out that he wouldn't be able to use it once the fight started. But Songyun replied that he was trying to avoid getting wet as much as possible. They both glared at each other. Subin thought to himself, is this guy stupid or what? Using an umbrella to fight. Meanwhile, Songyun also thought, is this son of a bitch an idiot? A raincoat? Without wasting time, they both began using their skills. The duel was on. Subin revealed that his ability was the spirit of water. Since it was raining and the area was surrounded by the sea, his power was at its strongest. Even though he wasn't confident he could control his strength, he warned that Songyun could die from their fight. Songyun quickly threw away his umbrella, drew out his chain and said, aren't you the one who started this? Then let's go all out. Subin sighed and said, well, it can't be helped. In an instant, he activated his water spirits and splashed a barrage of water towards Songyun, who managed to dodge. Without wasting time, Songyun quickly threw his chain towards Subin. But Subin stared at it unfazed. Bang! Songyun's chain shattered upon impact. Subin remarked that for an F rank the chain was impressive, but it was still weaker than an actual one. Songyun was shocked. He couldn't understand what was going on. Subin began casting again and summoned more water. A barrage of water surged towards Songyun, who dodged once more. Songyun tried to counterattack, but his efforts were in vain, since Subin used his water spirit as a shield. Then, Subin mocked him. Is that the only tactic you've got? He asked. Have you noticed? I haven't moved a single step. Do you get it now? You don't belong here. You should withdraw from the Hunter Academy. Looking at Songyun, it became clear that most of his summoned chains were breaking. But with a serious face, Songyun told Subin, you haven't moved a single step. That's why you didn't notice. There's a chain tied to your leg. Subin was surprised. He realized Songyun had been tricking him all along. Knowing that Subin's spirit was water, Songyun dragged him with the chain toward the ship's electric fence. Subin yelled, you bastard, and bang! He clashed with the electric fence and was electrocuted, collapsing to the ground. Songyun recalled Subin previously asking why he used that same tactic. Songyun replied, that's because it's the only thing I know, you son of a bitch. Songyun smiled and told him, you were bluffing so hard earlier, but your rank isn't that high, is it? Otherwise there's no way an F-ranker like me could beat you so badly. With a sudden change in aura and expression, Subin said, you get it now. It's time to get serious. Bang! Multiple water elements began to surround him. Songyun was shocked to see Subin could even summon multiple water spirits. Back in the room where they had been playing the game, a huge guy, whose name was still unknown, was startled. Something was going on. The rest were playing the game, and it turned out that Somi had summoned an SS-class mage. They all exclaimed in surprise. It was extremely rare to summon such a character. Somi smiled, and said she just got lucky. Sohyun was confused, and asked Purium what that meant. Purium asked her if it was her first time seeing a board game like this. Sohyun replied yes and asked if it was like Blue Marble. Purium explained that it wasn't exactly, it was a game for ability users. It analyzed powers to create characters accordingly. Now it was his turn. He placed his hand on the disc and told Sohyun to watch closely. The game began analyzing his ability. After a while, a Class B mage character was created. Purium explained that this was how one gets a character in the game. He told Sohyun that a few games like this existed for ability users, and were used for actual training. He handed her the disc and told her to try it since she was the fifth player. Sohyun held the disc for a while but nothing happened. The silence was awkward. Sohyun wondered why those flashy colors didn't show for her. Purium said he didn't know either. Woojin was also surprised and said he'd never seen that happen before. Mijun then said maybe Sohyun's power was too low for the game to detect. Suddenly, the game informed them, Player 5's ability cannot be analyzed. Player 5 is estimated to be a returnee. Upon hearing this, everyone was shocked, even Sohyun. She was surprised the game knew she was a returnee. The system then announced that it would assign a hidden class at random to her. They were even more shocked. One of the players exclaimed, a hidden class? I'm so jealous, I've never seen one before. But the huge guy said, forget that. Did the game just say Sohyun is a returnee? Woojin, with a serious expression, asked Sohyun if what the game said was true. She was terrified because her identity as a returnee was a secret. She remembered that before they boarded the ship, the professor had told her to keep the fact she was a returnee secret. She had asked why, and the professor explained that returnees often came back from the other world with a lot of issues. So-hyun, for example, had lost 12 years of her life. Many returnees couldn't adapt to society and often committed crimes. Moreover, ability sealing devices didn't work on returnees, and their abilities often rivaled S-rankers. In essence, they were walking natural disasters. That's why returnees had a bad reputation. If those around her found out, they might judge her. Remembering all this, So-hyun began to tremble. She feared that the students she saw as friends would judge her. She stammered, unsure of what to say, but Woojin told her to come on and share her story. Mi-jun whispered, saying she went to another world, right? They wanted to hear what happened. Purium chimed in. He also wanted to hear. The others agreed, eager to know. Still confused, So-hyun asked if they were okay with it. Weren't they weirded out that she was a returnee? So-mi said no, she didn't mind things like that. So-hyun breathed a sigh of relief. They weren't scared of her. Mi-jun said she wanted to know her story from the other world, coming back after fighting demon kings and all that. Then Mi-jun asked if So-hyun had ever killed someone. At that moment, memories of when she killed someone after returning from the other world came flooding back. Now, back to the fighting scene. As everyone could see, Subin was the one standing. It seemed he had defeated Sungyeon after deciding to get serious with the fight. Subin said it was too bad. Sungyeon might have been better in terms of strategy and technique, yet he was still the one who went down. He told Sungyeon not to take it too hard. Power that comes easily often ends up being weaker than the one earned through hard work. He continued, saying that some people give up on their dreams because of their low ranks, while others suddenly gain abilities and stumble into opportunities others are desperate for, as if it were nothing special. But power, family, connections, job, and money. It was the same for everything. There was a limit to what one could earn with just raw power. At school, Sungyeon would face people stronger and more cruel than him. Going there would only bring suffering. So he told Sungyeon to give up and not go to the Hunter Academy. But Sungyeon began to get up. He said his dad wasn't an S rank, not even an A rank, but he had still accomplished more than most A rank hunters. He had cleared tons of A and S rank dungeons. He had saved countless people. All of it was done through sheer effort. Now Sungyeon, filled with anger, declared that he might be an F rank, but no one got to decide if that was enough to kick him out of the competition. Subin then said, "Okay, if you know so much about your dad's accomplishments, then you must remember the S rank gate that appeared in Mapo 7 years ago, right?" Sungyeon replied, "Yes, why is he suddenly bringing that up?" Subin told him the dungeon break back then resulted in a lot of casualties. Aside from the people killed by monsters, some were even unlucky enough to be murdered by a hunter. Sungyeon replied that no one criticized what happened back then anymore. His father had a reason to do what he did. Upon hearing this, Subin was utterly angry and boiling with rage. He yelled, "My sister died there. Are you saying your father had no choice, sacrificing a few for the many? Is that what hunters believe in? Isn't a hunter supposed to protect everyone?" He then told Sungyeon he had a question. "Why are you doing all this? What kind of hunter are you trying to become?" Just as they were talking, a figure emerged, peeking at them from a distance. The figure was ominous. Even now, no one knew who it was, but that will be revealed in a future part of the story. Now back to the gaming session. But let's rewind a few minutes, just before the fight. Back in the room where they were playing games, Mi-jun asked So-hyun if she had ever killed someone. So-hyun became anxious. She quickly stood up and said she was going to the toilet, then began to run away. As she ran, Mi-jun laughed out loud, wondering what that was all about. She's funny, running away just like that. Purium, wearing a serious expression, asked Mi-jun why she would bring that up so suddenly. Mi-jun apologized, admitting that it was kind of creepy to mention. She said she was sorry. She then asked, "Is So-hyun in the magic engineering department?" Purium replied, "No. So-hyun is in the hunter department." Upon hearing this, Mi-jun responded, "What? Really? Then she's no good. Because being a hunter isn't just about hunting. Sometimes they have to kill people. In other words, take lives when necessary. And they all knew that when they came here." Mi-jun said she doubted So-hyun would survive in this academy if she had that weak mindset of not being able to kill a person. Now as So-hyun ran outside the room, she panted heavily. But then she calmed herself and wondered why she ran away. All she had to do was say she had never killed anyone. It wasn't like she was lying. But even now, whenever she thought about that moment from back then, her heart wouldn't stop pounding. She kept feeling like she didn't belong here. She wondered if she would be able to make new friends in this academy. Just then, a figure approached her, and So-hyun was startled. It turned out to be a girl. The girl greeted So-hyun and said, "Oh, you're that girl from the gaming room." She said, "I didn't tell you my name, right?" She then introduced herself. "My name is Mo-dan." So-hyun also introduced herself. Mo-dan asked if she was okay, can she still play the game? But So-hyun shook her head and said she wasn't sure. Mo-dan then said this was her first time encountering a hidden class, and she really wanted to see it. But So-hyun apologized. She said she didn't think she could play the game anymore with them. She thought it would go well, but now she wasn't sure if she could be friends with all of them. Just thinking about that moment in the past scared her. Mo-dan, trying to console So-hyun, told her that she had almost killed someone too. She had awakened late back in high school. It happened suddenly during class, and she lost control. Her friends got caught up in it and were gravely wounded. But still, she believed in herself. After all, getting intimidated wouldn't change anything. That was why she made an effort to ensure it would never happen again. Upon hearing this, So-yoon was surprised by Mo-dan's bravery. She then recalled a time when she was still in the other world, with her fairy friend. Back then, while walking through a particular mountain, So-yoon had asked Sion, "Wasn't there a crying rock here before? How did you move it?" But Sion replied that she hadn't moved the rock, she just spoke to it, and it moved by itself. She explained that when the rock was crying, maybe from heartbreak, or rather rock break, she had shared her pain with it. And eventually, the rock cheered up and left that place. From that memory in the other world, So-hyun remembered that even rocks, clouds, and people shared tears just the same. That was why they could all be friends. Back in the present, she told Mo-dan that she was right. She couldn't keep having low self-esteem. She had to just do the right thing, make an effort so she wouldn't make a mistake like killing someone again. Mo-dan smiled at her and said she'd explain everything, so they should go back and continue the game. But just then, they noticed a surge of water currents approaching them. They wondered what was happening. That was how they traced the direction of the water, and saw Subin and Sung-yoon. The ominous figure that had been peeping at Subin and Sung-yoon was both So-yoon and Mo-dan. Mo-dan wondered what was going on. She asked if that was her brother and what they were doing outside at that time. That was when they heard everything that Subin said. He asked, "Do you remember the gate break that appeared in Mappo 7 years ago, right?" Sung-yoon replied, "Yes, he remember." No one blames his father for what happened back then anymore. He had his reasons. Upon hearing this, Subin became furious. He yelled that his sister had died there, and that Sung-yoon's father had killed her. So-hyun was shocked. She couldn't believe her ears. She had heard everything he said, but Mo-dan couldn't hear it properly and wondered what they were talking about. So-hyun, thinking to herself, realized that their father killed Subin's older sister 7 years ago. Was that why Subin was angry now? Subin then asked Sung-hyun what kind of hunter he was trying to become, but Sung-hyun couldn't reply right away. Instead, he said, "Honestly, he've never thought deeply about what kind of hunter he want to be. He's just here because of personal admiration, and he's sure many people on this boat came here for the same reason. Some people just want to make friends. But no matter how pathetic the goal, if someone takes it seriously, that's all that matters." So he concluded that him and Subin are alike, they are the same. With anger, Subin responded coldly, "We are nothing alike." He began summoning more water spirits around him in anger. Seeing the impending danger, Sung-yoon quickly ran toward Subin and pushed him. Bang! They both fell to the ground, yelling in pain. Just then, something mysterious happened. A huge thunderbolt appeared in the sky, but it didn't seem natural. Sung-yoon stared at the direction it came from and lost focus. Subin took the opportunity to punch him away. As Subin stood up, he noticed his water spirit was fading. His power was failing and disappearing. He wondered what was happening, but this wasn't the time to think. Sung-yoon was already approaching him again and landed a punch. Subin fell to the ground, feeling weaker. Then he noticed an item on his hand. He wondered, was this a power sealing tool? Did Sung-yoon slip it on him at that moment, when they both fell? He wondered why a mere student would have such tool, but perhaps he had forgotten that Sung-yoon's father was a top ranker in the country, and Sung-yoon had taken a few useful things from his father's drawer before boarding the ship. Now as Subin lay on the ground, Sung-yoon smiled and said, "I still managed to land a blow, you bastard." But Subin didn't want to be defeated like that. He stood up, about to punch back, even though he couldn't use his powers anymore. Watching the escalating chaos, Mo-dan said, "This is brutal. They don't know what to do at this point." As the fight continued, Subin recalled the time when he was still a child, back during the dungeon break incident. After his sister died, he had found himself surrounded by corpses and blood. That day, he ran endlessly across the ruins. While running, he kept wondering to himself, why did this happen to him? What kind of causality threw him into this hell? The ground was soaked in blood, yet the stars in the sky continued to shine above, unaffected. He cried out in pain and collapsed mid-run, still a small boy. He questioned why no one had come to help him. Why, even though they were hunters, had they failed to save anyone? At the very least, they should have saved someone. From that day on, he made up his mind. If hunters could not take responsibility, then he would do it himself. For people like him, people who had no power, no one to save them in times of tragedy, Subin vowed to become a hunter who saves everyone. He swore never to leave anyone behind who was suffering, never again. Now, hearing Sung-yoon say that they were the same, Subin responded sharply. He said they were not alike. Why do people blessed with such unfair power use it only for their own selfish gain? He grabbed Sung-yoon and demanded, couldn't he at least try to be more serious and use his power for the greater good? But Sung-yoon replied that he didn't fully understand the responsibilities of a hunter, or what it truly meant to be one, or even anything about Subin himself. But wasn't that something they could learn from now on? That, after all, was why he came to school in the first place. Just then, a figure approached and fired a gun into the air. Both Subin and Sung-yoon scrambled, wondering, who the hell was that? Let's go back a few seconds ago, before the fight ended. So-hyun and Mo-dan were watching the battles unfold, wondering what they should do. The fight was so intense. Just then, Purium approached them and asked what was going on. Upon seeing Sung-hyun and Subin fighting, he exclaimed in disbelief, wondering what was wrong with them. Why were they fighting? So-hyun replied that she didn't know either. She saw them fighting as soon as she came out. Purium began yelling, trying to get their attention. Just stop! What are you two doing, fighting on the ship? But it turns out that they couldn't hear him at all. He shouted again, worried that someone would get hurt if this continued. So-hyun began walking toward them and said that since they couldn't hear from this distance, she would have to stop them by force. But Purium asked how she intended to stop them, considering they were ability users. So-hyun replied that they just needed to separate them, but Purium warned her. She must never interfere in a fight between ability users. It's no different from jumping into a gunfight. Upon hearing this, So-hyun got an idea. A gun confiscation plan, she said. She told Purium they would just take away the guns, meaning they would disarm the situation. But Purium firmly refused. Absolutely not. They can't do that. Still, he said that if they left Sung-hyun and Subin fighting like this, and if another water blast hit the ship's deck, it would be a real disaster. Just then, he remembered something in his bag. Pulling it out, he said he'll use this to stop them. So-hyun, surprised, asked what he was trying to do. Purium pulled out a gun, a magic tool, and said he had no choice than to do this. Seeing the gun, So-hyun thought to herself, maybe Purium is really planning to shoot her brother and Subin. Purium then approached the two fighters and shot the gun into the air. The moment he fired, the fight stopped. He sighed in relief. Finally, they're looking this way. Now that he had their attention, he yelled at them, asking, "What are they doing?" They didn't even answer when they were called. And now they're fighting with their abilities. What if something had gone wrong with the ship? What if other kids got caught up and got hurt? He sighed again. Why are there so many troublemakers around me? Just then, the professor appeared behind him. The professor leaned in and whispered, "Who gave you permission to carry a magic tool on the ship?" He reminded Purium that regardless of research, magic tools had been banned on campus since last semester. Then the professor smiled slightly and said, "All three of them will be disciplined." Upon hearing that, Sung-hyun muttered to himself, "Damn it, they're definitely screwed." The next morning, they arrived at the ship dock, at the destination of the Songgin school. As they unloaded their luggage to be assigned to their various dorms, Woojin sighed. "I lost. Even I, the great me, never got disciplined before a semester even started." Purium sighed and told Woojin, "To think I beat you with something like this. I'm so honored I feel like dropping out." Subin apologized to Purium, saying it was their fault he ended up like this. But Purium told him not to worry. It was fine. He used a magic tool too, so that was on him. In fact, that item was something a professor had asked him to bring in, so there would be some leniency. The professor would probably take most of the blame. Still, Purium said the real issue was both of them who were fighting. Whatever decision the professors made, it was going to be a hassle. Purium then said that they all should start heading to the dorms they've been assigned to. So-hyun was surprised and asked if he's not going to the same dorm with them. But Purium replied that it's different this time. Sung-hyun then explained to his sister, the Hunter School doesn't have just one dorm, big and small dorms are scattered all around the island. So-hyun exclaimed, "Then the school must be huge." She thought to herself, hopefully she won't be placed in the same dorm as that girl Mi-jun. Sung-hyun and So-hyun decided to check the name of the dorm they were heading to. It turned out to be Young Sog-gwan. Just then, they heard a loud thud. A bag had fallen to the ground. They looked in the direction of the noise and saw Subin staring at his phone, shocked. He had just realized he'd been assigned to the same dorm as Sung-hyun. Sung-hyun sighed. "Are they kidding me? Why him, of all people?" Just then, a lady stepped out of her car and smiled. "So, these are the ones assigned to her dorm." She introduced herself. Her name is Ando Young, their dorm supervisor. And the kids greeted her politely. Mo-dan then tapped So-hyun on the shoulder and said, since they're in the same dorm, they should get along well. So-hyun replied, "All right, she will do that." She was happy to have already made a new friend. The supervisor then told everyone to place their luggage in the trunk. She would give them a ride to the dorm. They all agreed cheerfully, except Sung-hyun and Subin. About 100 years ago, during a chaotic era when monsters devoured people and evil ability users rampaged across the world, one man had a vision, an idea to create an educational institution for ability users. A few years later, avoiding the eyes of the Japanese occupation, he secretly built a school on a remote island. That school was later known as Songgin Ability School, or as it's called in the modern day, the Hunter School. Now, nationality, age, and education qualifications don't matter. As long as you have ability, anyone can enroll in Korea's only ability user school. From its remote southern island location, it may seem like a countryside school in the middle of nowhere. But what makes it special is that the entire island serves as the school's campus. With high-quality training tools, diverse training grounds, a vast and rich information network, and infrastructure rivaling that of a major city, this massive scale is what makes such an institution possible. That's why every aspiring hunter dreams of entering this sanctuary of education. However, there is one girl who entered the school knowing nothing of its prestigious reputation. She is here now, having just arrived, and we all know her as So-hyun. Just then, Sung-hyun entered the room, calling out to his sister. He told her to hurry up and get ready or she'll be late for the entrance ceremony. So-hyun smiled back at him and said, "She's done already." So-hyun finally came out after what felt like 2 years of applying makeup. Sung-hyun saw her and casually said, "Oh, she's finally here." Then asked, "Where's the other guy?" So-hyun didn't understand the question. Which other guy is he talking about? That's when Modon stepped in and mentioned Subin. According to her, Subin said he had to prepare for the entrance ceremony. Sung-hyun didn't get it. What's Subin preparing for? Modon explained that Subin had a lot to do because he was this year's freshman representative. The scene then shifted to the ceremony. Subin, standing at the podium as the representative, began his pledge. He said, "I, Subin, representing the 2,625 new students, pledge to abide by the school rules and regulations." But even as he said it, Sung-hyun scoffed to himself. Abide by the regulations, my ass. This was the same guy who had been disciplined even before the ceremony started. And yet, he was the one making the pledge. Still, Sung-hyun figured there had to be a reason. If Subin was chosen as the freshman representative, that probably meant he was the top admitted student. That alone said a lot. And from that, Sung-hyun learned something, especially when thinking about the fight on the ship. If Subin hadn't had his powers sealed by that magic tool, if he had been even slightly more rational, then Sung-hyun would have been the one lying there defeated. And just like Sung-hyun's dad said before, if he wanted to survive here, he had to join the student council. This wasn't the time to be happy about getting admitted. There were still tough people ahead. Unlike his sister So-hyun, she was cheerful just because she finally got to attend school again. She was already thinking about making friends. She told herself how glad she was that classes would start right after the ceremony. Since it was a hunter school, she assumed the lessons would be interesting. Or so she thought. But just then the dormitory master showed up and told So-hyun she needed to return to the dormitory. So-hyun asked if something was wrong. The dorm master responded, asking if she had checked her schedule. So-hyun said she hadn't seen anything like that. That's when the dorm master explained everything. Apparently, So-hyun had entered the school without completing elementary school. So her schedule wasn't like the others. While the rest of the students would be taking mana-related classes, So-hyun would be studying for an equivalency exam with the dorm master. So-hyun was shocked. What's an equivalency exam? The answer, it was a regular academic exam. Korean, math, English, social studies, Korean history, basic subjects. So-hyun immediately panicked. She yelled that she hated it, especially math. But it was too late. She was already inside the car and the dorm master was driving her away without a care. As they left, Sung-hyun told the dorm master to please take care of his older sister. She said not to worry and waved goodbye. Meanwhile, in Ginkgo Hall, students were seated at their desks. Each one had a sheet of paper in front of them. Sung-hyun looked down. It was an exam. The subject was titled, Hunter Ethics. He wondered what kind of ethics they would even learn in a place like this. Elsewhere, Subin checked his phone. Class was starting in 1 minute, but there was no sign of a professor. Woojin told him not to worry. The professor will come in exactly on time. And he was right. As soon as the clock hit 12, the doors burst open. Everyone turned to look. A man rolled in, on a scooter, hands in his pockets, casual posture. This was their lecturer. He introduced himself as Ajiwarajan, but I will call him Mr. Iwara. Japanese names are too long. So Mr. Iwara said he was glad to meet them all. Then immediately added that he hated this school. Actually, he hated most schools. Putting 40 people in one classroom and expecting them to learn the same thing was inefficient, especially when the students were ability users. According to him, ability users were all different. They had weird personalities or strong individual principles. In his own case, he cared about one thing: efficiency. Efficient work, efficient processing. Nothing else mattered. And since the lecturer was talking about efficiency, he decided to ask the class a question. He said most monsters could easily be handled by modern military power, yet only hunters are sent into dungeons to eliminate them. So he asked, why is that? The students looked at each other, sweating nervously as if the answer might appear on someone's face. Since no one could answer, he said the reason was simple. Using hunters to kill monsters is more economical. If governments use military force, the cost of guns, ammunition, and operations would far exceed the profits earned from the magic stones. In comparison, even if all ability users did was eat, sleep, and poop, they could still unleash overwhelming force, and that made them far more cost-effective. That's how the profession of a hunter was born. In the end, it's all about money. And that's also why they're called hunters, not heroes. Mr. Iwara continued. He said for hunters, money isn't the only cost. The physical and mental energy they spend during battle is also a form of expense. In combat, you have to use the minimum amount of ability, move efficiently, and choose the optimal strategy. There's no bigger fool than someone who dies just because they overexerted themselves. In other words, judgment. That's the number one quality a hunter must have. A hunter must know how to assess the situation. Right then, the lecturer pointed to a student seated near the front. He asked the student to tell the class what his ability category was. The student scratched his head and said he was a construction sorcerer. The lecturer nodded, then pressed him further. Do you know the range of your ability? The student answered, around 100 meters, max. The lecturer asked again, in the case of physical construction, can he decompose compounds? The student hesitated. He haven't tried. He's still a beginner. But the questions didn't stop. How many kilograms can you manipulate? What's the speed at which you can manipulate objects? What common traits do the materials you use share? The student was completely stunned. He had no answer. The lecturer approached him and said flatly, this means failure. If he couldn't answer questions like that, he had no business being here. By now, the student should already know himself and know his enemy. If he had both, he would never lose a fight. The lecturer continued, how can someone who doesn't even understand their own capabilities possibly evaluate someone else's and come up with a strategy? Then he turned towards Sungyun. Hey, curled-haired boy, you. He asked him to tell the class what his category was. But Sungyun remained silent. Truth was, he didn't know. The lecturer's tone changed immediately. Why aren't you answering? Sungyun started sweating. The whole room was silent, and finally he said it. I don't know. I don't know anything about my category. The lecturer frowned hard. The entire classroom went stiff. The students couldn't believe it. Someone was actually admitted into the academy without knowing their own ability category. After the lecture ended, students started heading back to their dorms. In the hallway, Sungyun was walking alone when someone called out to him. It was Subin. Subin shouted, asking if he's crazy? What does he mean by he don't know his own category? He ran up to him and asked, why are you acting like this on the first day? Are you pretending? Sungyun answered honestly. He said he had heard terms like category and construction sorcerer for the first time today. He didn't know anything about them before, and that's why he couldn't answer. Subin was speechless. It was true. Sungyun really didn't know anything. Subin got frustrated and said he'd rather forget it. He wasn't going to involve himself in this stupidity any further. He told Sungyun to figure it out on his own, and walked away. As he stood in the hallway, Sungyun felt awkward. The other students were still staring at him. Their glares were sharp and suspicious, like he had done something terribly wrong. At that point, Sungyun still didn't realize what kind of consequences his actions would bring. Meanwhile, the dormitory master praised Sohyun, saying she was quite good at addition and subtraction. Sohyun smiled and told her they should wrap things up for today. But the dormitory master shook her head. It was time to move on to multiplication. Sohyun let out a heavy sigh. She really wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Back in the office, Mr. Ji-young was interrupted by a student entering. He looked up and asked what the student wanted. It was Sungyun. Mr. Ji-young asked him if he already couldn't keep up with the school. Sungyun replied yes, and added that the other students all seemed to understand everything like they had already studied it before. He explained that he had searched through countless internet sources and books, but couldn't find anything about the school's curriculum or its academic materials. Mr. Ji-young was surprised. Internet and books? He repeated. In an ability school? He then decided to ask Sungyun a question, just in case. Do you at least have an ability user license? Sungyun answered, no, he didn't have one yet. The moment he said that, Mr. Ji-young grabbed him by the shoulder and shouted, asking why he hadn't gotten one yet. He reminded Sungyun that even if he wasn't a hunter, any ability user must have a license. But Sungyun replied that he couldn't get one. Minors like him needed parental consent. Upon hearing that, Mr. Ji-young muttered to himself, so, Hunter Gishinbo was the one trying to prevent his children from becoming hunters. He had gone so far as to block them from obtaining licenses. How wicked is that man, he said to himself. Immediately, Mr. Ji-young picked up his phone. He remembered that Sohyun, Sungyun's sister, was a returnee. So, she must have a license. He called the dormitory master on the spot. While on the phone, he explained the situation and asked her to check if Sohyun had a hunter license. But Sohyun was just as confused as her brother. She didn't even know what a hunter license was. She said she had never heard of it before. The dormitory master relayed that back to Mr. Ji-young, and he was stunned. Then Sungyun quietly asked if there's any way he can still get a license once he become an adult. But Mr. Ji-young raised his voice. No, It's too late. He can't guarantee anything anymore. He demanded to know how Sung-yoon had been training if he didn't even know this basic information. Have you just been training by instinct? He asked. Sung-yoon said no. He explained that he had been doing physical training with Kim Woo. According to him, Kim Woo said it was difficult to teach him about his ability, so he never told him anything about the license. But Mr. Ji-hyung snapped again. That's not because Kim Woo didn't want to tell you. It's because he couldn't. Sung-yoon was confused. He asked why. Mr. Ji-hyung explained. Ability users around the world, once they receive their license, are automatically placed under a special binding. It's a contract-like system, a massive covenant tied together by the collective energy of all license holders. Because of that, they cannot reveal information about abilities to non-licensed individuals. It's a protective mechanism that's impossible to break. That's also why any information found on the internet or in the media is either inaccurate or barely scratches the surface. Sung-yoon asked why it was also strictly controlled. Mr. Ji-hyung gave him the answer. It was because these abilities, by their very nature, are dangerous. Even the weakest ability user has the potential to kill an ordinary person, depending on how their powers are used. And unlike weapons, abilities can't be confiscated. They're invisible to regular people, and once awakened, they're permanent. If anyone could just pick up and wield this kind of power, society would collapse. That's why the system is in place, to protect public safety. After everything he just discovered, Mr. Ji-hyung muttered to himself again. Sung-yoon was definitely unusual. For him to train his abilities this far without even knowing proper hunter ethics, that was rare, and it reminded him. The reason he had recommended Sung-yoon for admission wasn't just because of his potential, but also because of his well-trained instincts. To have come this far under such unfavorable conditions was nothing short of remarkable. With a small, amazed smirk, Mr. Ji-hyung muttered to himself that he really did have an eye for talent. Then, he turned to Sung-yoon and told him not to worry too much. There was still good news. Even without a license, enrolled students at the Hunter Academy received equivalent qualifications. He handed a small cube to Sung-yoon and told him to take it. Sung-yoon looked at it curiously. What is this? Mr. Ji-hyung explained that it was called a blue cube. With it, Sung-yoon could access a secret network exclusive to ability users, containing the most advanced information about abilities. He said he would send Sung-yoon a message later and instructed him to study everything organized within the cube. But he also gave a strict warning. Sung-yoon must not let anyone know that he doesn't have a hunter license. And no one must find out he knows nothing about school ethics. Since this was a world-class, prestigious school, elitism around skill level was very real here, and since Sung-yoon wanted to become a student council member, he needed to be extremely careful. Elsewhere, the dormitory master also had a session with So-yoon. She launched her computer and handed So-yoon a blue cube of her own. So-yoon accepted it and asked what it was used for. The dormitory master explained everything clearly. So-yoon then asked if she could use the cube to play games. The dormitory master smiled and said yes, technically she could, but that's not what the cube was for. She encouraged So-yoon to press anywhere on the cube to see what it could do. So-yoon tapped the surface, and instantly the cube lit up. A bright glow surged from it as the system confirmed. Student Ki So-yoon. Confirmed. A rush of information poured out, leaving So-yoon frozen in place, overwhelmed by the cube's advanced technology. The dormitory master explained that So-yoon could now ask the cube anything she was curious about. So-yoon, still amazed, asked, "So, the cube can talk too?" The cube responded, "That is correct. Please speak." Now excited, So-yoon said she wouldn't hold back. She had always been curious about something that happened back when Subin and Sung-yoon were fighting on the ship. So she asked the cube, "What happened in Mapo District 7 years ago?" The system replied that her keywords were too ambiguous. It asked what specific incident she was referring to, because many had occurred in Mapo District 7 years ago. So-yoon clarified. She was asking about an incident involving her father, where people died. The cube began to process the request, but the dormitory master immediately interrupted. "No, not that. That's not what the cube is meant for. Don't use it for that." She advised So-yoon to first check out the school's online community. She could see what other students usually talked about on the academy's internal chat boards. The cube redirected her to the school community panel. There, messages from students appeared in real time. Some asked if others wanted to get lunch. Another asked about the name of the cat that always roamed around the dormitory. Others were asking about course registration times or when the library would close. So-yoon, reading through the messages, wasn't impressed. She muttered, "The school chat is way too normal." The dormitory master replied, "All student boards are like this. What did you expect?" But then, a new message popped up. One student asked, "Did anyone take the theory class today?" Another answered, "Yeah, but that new student seems to know nothing." A third message followed, "What's the name of that dumb student again?" Then another student chimed in, "I overheard in the hallway. They said it's Sung-yoon." Apparently, he doesn't even know his own ability category. How did someone like that get into Hunter Academy? Is he even online? How did he pass the written exam? There has to be some kind of corruption behind this. There's no way he got in normally. They were convinced Sung-yoon had entered the school through some shady connection. More students joined in, claiming something fishy was definitely going on. One even asked if they should investigate. One of the students asked how they planned to investigate the rumor about Sung-yoon. The other student simply replied, "I have my ways." Just then, that very student, the one behind the messages, approached. Meanwhile, Sung-yoon was on his way back to the dormitory after class. As he walked, he was reading information from the blue cube Mr. Ji-young had given him. That's when he discovered something important. There were 5 basic categories for ability users. But just as he was going through the details, the student suddenly appeared. He had a camera, an assistant beside him, and oddly sharp eyes that resembled those of a hyena. He greeted our guy awkwardly and asked if his name was Sung-yoon, from the Hunter department. Sung-yoon replied yes, that was him. Immediately, the strange student told his assistant to start recording, because he was about to begin an interview. Sung-yoon was caught off guard. He asked what they were doing and why they were filming him. The student explained that they were part of the school's newspaper club. They report any interesting incidents within the Hunter Ability School as quickly as possible. Then, without permission, the student pulled out a ring and asked if Sung-yoon could wear it for a moment. Before Sung-yoon could even respond, the ring was placed in his hand. A moment later, a number appeared on the ring. Sung-yoon looked at it and asked what it meant. The strange student laughed loudly and said it was just like the rumors. Sung-yoon really didn't know anything. Then he explained. The ring was an A-rank measuring device used to gauge ability ranks. And right now, it had measured Sung-yoon as an F rank, the lowest possible. He shouted, "An F-rank student, in the Hunter department." He claimed that if they published this, their newspaper club might finally get national recognition. Sung-yoon, still confused, asked what newspaper they were talking about, and who even gave them permission to interview him. But the strange student ignored him and pressed on with the so-called interview. He brought the mic close and asked Sung-yoon directly, "What kind of tricks did you use to get into this school? Rumors say you bribed your way in. Others say you're a chaebol's son, or maybe the child of a famous hunter. Care to comment?" Sung-yoon had enough. He told them seriously to put the camera down while he was still being polite. The assistant grew nervous. She said it was getting scary and started lowering the camera. But the main guy stopped her. He asked if she could really call herself a journalist. "Why would you stop recording now?" he said. Sung-yoon, now serious, told him again. "Before that journalism of yours gets physically shut down." Hand over the ring. The strange student just laughed and said if Sung-yoon wanted to end the interview, he'd have to take him down. "Impossible," he scoffed, "especially for an F-rank parachute student like you." But before he could laugh again, he was already on the ground, pinned down. Sung-yoon had knocked him out and locked his wrist in an instant. The guy tapped out, begging Sung-yoon to let go. He promised not to publish the story and offered to return the ring. While holding him down, Sung-yoon muttered that he was afraid something like this would happen. And now here they were, these kinds of people, already showing up. He wondered, at this rate, could he even join the student council? Despite being an F rank, Sung-yoon easily took the guy down. But there was a reason. The student was from the welfare department. His assistant, from the medical department. Neither of them had any actual combat experience. Back on campus, changes were happening fast. In one class, Mr. Iwara made an announcement. There would be a mock monster battle. It would be done in teams of 3 or more. Every student was instructed to pair up. If they didn't form a group, they would have to face the battle alone. Panic spread quickly. All the students began scrambling to find teammates. Everyone was now searching for a group to join. The first group, Sung-yoon, tried to join, rejected him. They apologized and said their team was already full. The next one told him they had already formed their group and couldn't take anyone else. Then, a girl scoffed and said she only allowed C rank or higher to join her team. Since Sung-yoon was most likely F rank, she said she couldn't accept someone like him. Left with no options, Sung-yoon approached the professor and explained that no team would let him join. The professor looked at him and asked, "What do you mean by that?" And then added, if that's the case, Sung-yoon would have to face the mock battle alone. Sung-yoon was stunned. The scene shifted to the mock exam room. All students had been placed in a simulation. Now it was Sung-yoon's turn. He stood alone, holding a small sword facing a towering golem several times his size. Staring up at the monster, he yelled, "This is bullshit. How the hell is he supposed to defeat this thing?" But before he could process anything further, the golem swung its massive arm and hit him straight across the face. Songyun was launched backward, slammed to the ground, and failed the test immediately. Lying flat on the floor, Songyun thought to himself, this was just as he expected. He should have known he'd be treated this way from the beginning. The professor informed him that he had received a total score of 0 in the mock exam. He failed. Later, in another classroom, a different professor was giving a lecture. He called out to Songyun again and asked him a question, using the hints written on the board. He asked Songyun to deduce a strategy for the dungeon shown in the diagram. Songyun replied bluntly, "I don't know." The professor moved on to the next question, asking him another scenario. Songyun gave an answer based on what he thought was right. The professor told him it was wrong. Not only that, he continued asking multiple questions, each one tougher than the last, and Songyun failed them all. Finally, with a sharp change in tone and a heavy aura, the professor asked, "Why are you even here?" Songyun forced a weak smile and responded, "I'm sorry, it's not like I wanted this either." Later, in Dotori Hall, the student cafeteria, students were eating casually, laughing and chatting. But Songyun sat alone, fists clenched, on the verge of snapping. He was furious. Inwardly, he yelled, why was the professor being such a jerk to him? Why was he the only one getting questioned? And not just that, the questions were impossible. How the hell is he supposed to know the weakness of some monster that appeared in 1986, he thought. Just then, his sister Sohyun approached from a distance and waved cheerfully at him. But Songyun immediately gestured for her to leave. Right after that, Sohyun's only friend, Mo-Dan, came and pulled her away, telling her they needed to go quickly. There was a reason. If Sohyun stayed too close to Songyun, she might get dragged into his situation, because at the moment, a rumor was spreading all over the school. A rumor about Songyun. A rumor that had taken over every hallway and chat room. Songyun sighed and muttered to himself, well, this kind of treatment's fine. Come to think of it, he was always alone back in middle school too. Nothing's changed. But the real problem wasn't the isolation, it was the student council. In a situation like this, there was no way he could get elected, unless he showed some kind of strength. Suddenly, Subin appeared with a tray of food. He looked at Songyun and asked, "You're eating alone again?" Songyun frowned. Why is he acting nice all of a sudden? Subin didn't answer right away. He sat down across from him. After a pause, he admitted, "Honestly, after you failed every question in class, it's not surprising the others started avoiding you." He leaned forward and whispered something. Songyun grew annoyed and stood up to leave, but Subin stopped him. He said he had something important to tell him. It was about his older sister. That caught Songyun's attention. He sat back down and asked, "What happened to her?" Subin explained. In yesterday's mock monster battle class, Sohyun had been placed in a group of 3, mostly female students. During the battle, the group leader snapped at her. She asked what Sohyun was even doing. Why wasn't she attacking the monster or helping the team? She pointed out that Sohyun hadn't used her ability even once, and she clearly wasn't good with weapons either. Sohyun couldn't respond. She had been holding back her power, so all she could do was apologize. Then, Mo-Dan stepped in. She asked the group leader why she was shouting at Sohyun. According to Mo-Dan, she has done twice the work for herself and Sohyun, so there was no reason to yell. The group leader admitted that was true, but then added, "Sohyun asked to join our group. She should at least carry her own weight." With that, the leader walked away and said to just forget about it. Sohyun apologized to Mo-Dan, saying she didn't mean to be a burden. But Mo-Dan reassured her. She said it was okay. She didn't have to apologize. Subin said it seemed okay at first, because Mo-Dan appeared to be looking out for Sohyun in their shared classes, but that didn't last long. Sohyun stood silently, looking like she was on the verge of tears. She told herself, as expected, she couldn't use magic, not since the incident. The lecturer had said that even if she went berserk, the professor would be able to control her power. But right now, her mind was clouded. She couldn't control anything. She was still haunted by the memory of killing someone. And aside from that, she couldn't stop thinking about her father, wondering if he had killed someone too. Even when she asked the blue cube for answers, the supervisor kept avoiding the topic. She sighed. Was school always this exhausting? Her eyes gradually shut, and without realizing it, she fell asleep. Some minutes, or maybe hours, passed. Suddenly, her eyes jolted open. She jumped up in a panic. The class was already over. She cursed herself. Idiot. What kind of student sleeps in their classes? She looked around, desperate to figure out who she could copy notes from. She noticed Subin chatting casually with a group of students, but remembering the fight between him and her younger brother, she didn't dare go near him. As she kept staring, Subin noticed her from across the room. They made eye contact, and right away, Sohyun turned her head and rushed out of the classroom. Subin was left confused, wondering why she ran off like that. Outside the classroom hallway, Sohyun leaned against a wall with tears in her eyes. She called herself an idiot again. At this rate, she was definitely going to fail the exam if she didn't have notes to study from. Just then, someone approached her. It was Janil, the huge guy. He asked her if she was crying. Sohyun looked up and immediately recognized him. They had met before, back on the ship, when they played games together. She decided to tell him everything that happened. After hearing her out, Janil asked, "Wait, you're crying over something like that?" Then, he offered to show her his notes so she could copy them. Sohyun was grateful and told him she'd really appreciate it. Janil smiled and said, "Of course. Follow me." They headed off together, to a place that turned out to be a lecture room. Once inside, Janil called out, "Sona." Sona turned. "What is it now?" Janil told her to show him her notes from class. Sohyun was surprised. Didn't Janil say he was going to show his own notes? Why was he now asking someone else for theirs? Sona sighed. She said she wasn't sure she could do that. Last time, Janil had promised it would be the last time he copied her notes. Janil quickly clarified, "No, this isn't for me. He's asking for a freshman, Sohyun. She couldn't take notes today, so he's asking on her behalf." Then he added, "It'd be great if you could show them to me too while you're at it." Sona stood still for a moment, like she was facing a difficult decision. She didn't answer. Janil asked her what was wrong. He said he couldn't afford to fail this year again. "Do you want to see me fail?" he asked. Just then, Sohyun stepped forward and tapped Janil's arm. She told him, if she doesn't want to share her notes, then she doesn't have to. The entire class turned and stared in surprise. Sohyun continued, "Asking someone to hand over their notes against their will. That's not right, is it?" Janil froze. He looked shocked. He felt ashamed and angry at the same time. It was like she had just called him a bully. He snapped back. "Why are you acting like I'm doing something bad? I'm going out of my way to help you. And you talk like this." But Sohyun responded immediately, "Isn't it actually a bad thing?" The class burst into laughter. Some students laughed outright. Others snickered quietly. To them, it looked like Janil had forced himself into helping, only to get publicly rejected. Now that she had said what she needed to say, Sohyun turned to leave. She said, "Guess I'll be going now." And with that, she walked out of the room. Janil didn't say a word. But just as Sohyun was about to leave, Janil suddenly grabbed her hand, forcefully. He yelled at her, demanding to know if she really thought she could just walk away like this. He said she had a talent for making people look like villains. "Hope you know that," he added. Sohyun replied calmly that she understood, so he should let go of her and just talk. But Janil grew more aggressive. He said she had to clear up the misunderstanding before she left. If she didn't, he'd be publicly humiliated. His grip tightened. Sohyun winced. It was starting to hurt. And now, she was getting angry too. Without warning, she raised her hand and slapped him. She told him to let go immediately. Everyone watching, Sona and the other students, froze in shock. Something was off. Janil was bleeding. He looked down, stunned. He asked her what she just did to him. He couldn't believe it. He stammered, "Did you just use an ability on me?" But Sohyun shook her head. She said she didn't do anything, she just slapped him. Janil grew even more alarmed. What does she mean, no? He's a body art master. He shouldn't get hurt by something like that. He yelled, "It must be because you are a returnee, aren't you?" At that moment, Sohyun's expression changed. She couldn't believe it. She had trusted him. And now he had revealed her secret. The entire class began murmuring. She's a returnee? If Janil, a body art user, got hurt, then it's serious. Last year too, someone like him got injured by a returnee. The class was buzzing. Janil continued, "How are all returnees like this? Do they not care about using their abilities on others?" Sohyun started to cry. She said she didn't mean to hurt him. But Janil wasn't done. He clenched his fists. He said he should have known from the boat that she wasn't any good, that they were never meant to be friends. Just as he was about to launch an attack on Sohyun, a sudden blast struck his face and sent him flying backward. It was a wave of water. Subin had arrived. He stood calmly between them and said, "Those aren't good words, especially coming from someone who just saw injustice and chose to double down." Janil growled and demanded to know who the hell he was. Subin replied with ease, "My name is Subin. I'm a freshman." He explained that he had been watching the whole thing. From what he saw, Sohyun never used her ability. So why was Janil accusing her? Janil refused to back down. He said, "There's no way. She definitely used her ability. A body art user like him doesn't get hurt easily." He pointed at Subin. "You used your ability on me just now too." Subin remained composed. He said it was common knowledge. Returnees often had superior physical traits. Some returnees were physically stronger than body art specialists. He then turned to the class and asked, "Did anyone here actually see So-hyun use an ability?" The room was silent. Not a single student responded. Subin continued, "And what's so wrong with using abilities anyway? Didn't Janil grab her arm by force? And right here, in front of everyone, he exposed her secret. Just a moment ago, wasn't he about to hit her? Compared to that, a flick of power is nothing." Janil became furious. He began sprinting towards Subin in rage. "These little brat. I'll make you pay for that mouth." But before he could get close, he stopped. He froze in place because he felt something, a powerful surge of energy radiating from Subin. Subin looked him dead in the eye. "If you're so sure of yourself," he said, "why don't we settle this with a duel? You're our senior, right? That means you'd never refuse a spar." The entire class erupted in cheers, shouting Subin's name. Meanwhile, Janil clenched his teeth. He couldn't believe he was being challenged. A duel by a freshman. After telling everything that happened, Subin and Sung-yoon stood quietly for a moment. Then Subin said he understood why Sung-yoon had been avoiding his sister. But even so, he told him he should at least show some interest. Now that everyone knew So-hyun was a returnee, school life probably wouldn't be easy for her either. Sung-yoon frowned. He muttered, "That piece of shit," revealing her secret like that. This just made everything worse. But even as he said it, he admitted that his own situation wasn't easy either. Everyone was starting to treat him like an outcast. The rumors about him were still spreading, and he didn't know what he was supposed to do. Just then, Woojin appeared out of nowhere. He casually said it seemed like there might be a way out. Both Sung-yeon and Subin turned in surprise. Subin yelled, "When did you get here?" But Woojin didn't answer. He just kept eating his noodles. He muttered to himself that the noodles were tasty, though last year's were even better. He said the broth used to be thicker, and there was more meat back then. The cafeteria lady from last year was really good. If only the tragic incident of her being replaced hadn't occurred, Subin snapped. "That's not what I asked you. When did you even show up? How did you appear without making a sound? Did you use an ability?" But Sung-yoon interrupted them. He said that wasn't the important part. He reminded them of what Woojin had just said, about there being a way out. So he asked Woojin directly, "What are you talking about?" Woojin looked up and said there was a way for Sung-yoon to improve his reputation. If that happened, everything else would follow. Sung-yoon asked what the method was. Woojin advised him to aim for the observation class, happening 2 weeks from now. Sung-yoon inquired if that was the class where parents came to watch, like a PTA meeting. Woojin confirmed. At that time, the 91st class, this year's freshmen, would face off against the 90th class, the second years, in sparring matches. Subin doubted the idea. He said there was no way that kind of event allowed outside observers. Unqualified individuals weren't even allowed near the lecture halls. But Woojin corrected him. "It's not a class where parents watch," he said. "The observers are actual professionals, guild members from famous hunter groups, corporate managers from hunter-related companies, and top-ranked active hunters." He said it was no different from a large-scale scouting event. And if Sung-yoon performed well in that setting, he could flip his reputation instantly. Subin admitted that if the freshmen were mixed with the seniors, the number of people involved would be huge, so he asked, "How exactly does it proceed?" Woojin explained that last year, they were grouped by student ID number. If nothing changed, this year would likely follow the same system. He advised Sung-yeon to find a senior with a low rank and challenge them to a spar. That way, he could show the best version of himself. Woojin even offered to list a few second-year students with lower ranks, but Sung-yeon declined. He said he didn't need a D-rank opponent. That wouldn't help his image. If he wanted to shift public opinion, he needed to face someone with a higher rank, and for that, he already had a plan. In the next scene, Sung-yoon approached Professor Ji-hyung and said he wanted to access student data videos. The professor frowned. He explained that students weren't normally allowed to enter that room, only professors. But after a pause, he said it wasn't a big deal. He pulled out his personal card and handed it to Sung-yoon. Later, Sung-yoon entered the school's library. He followed the directions to the data viewing room, a private section used to access archived combat footage. There he looked for a specific section labeled 2025 Observation Class, Student Pass Records. Based on what Woojin told him, last year's observation class was organized by student ID numbers. So, if the observation class proceeded the same way as last year, Sung-yeon knew what to expect. The two returnees closest to him by student ID number would most likely end up in the same group as him, since about 30 students were assigned per group. At least one of them would definitely be with him. Sung-yeon planned to study their combat styles thoroughly. Then, during the observation class, right when everyone was watching, he would challenge one of the returnees to a duel. He would subdue them publicly and rebuild his reputation from the ground up. The scene shifted. It was night in one of the dormitories. Janil was still seething with anger. He explained everything to Minju. Because of Sohyun, he had been humiliated. Minju asked, "So? What is he going to do about it?" Janil clenched his fists. He said the observation class was coming soon, and he had to show that brat who was boss. Minju burst out laughing. You plan to defeat Sohyun, a returnee, after she made your nose bleed?" Still laughing, she added, "Well, she'll admit. Sohyun is unlikable, therefore she would like to help him out." Janil blinked. He was surprised she agreed. He asked, "So what? You think you can beat her?" Minju nodded. "Of course. But in exchange, you'll owe me a favor." Janil agreed. He said he'd do anything she asked. But he reminded her that defeating a returnee wouldn't be easy. Minju said not to worry. In fact, because Sohyun was a returnee, there was a way to beat her. 2 weeks later, the observation class began. The freshmen were now facing off against their seniors. Sungyun arrived at the battle room, fully geared up. This was the moment he would have to prove himself. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, a separate lecture was taking place. In Sohyun's current class, the lesson came to an end. Professor Ji-hyung told the students that was all for today. Next time, they would practice slicing through curved targets in one go. But Sohyun wasn't paying attention. She was lost in thought. Even in class, she still couldn't keep up with the rest of the students. Then the professor called her name. He asked if she could come with him for a moment. She replied, "Yes, sir," and followed. The professor said he wanted to take her to where the observation class was being held. They started walking, and kept walking. But they still hadn't arrived. Eventually, they reached a small river within the school grounds. The professor stopped. Sohyun looked around, confused. She asked, "Is there a classroom here?" The professor nodded and pointed at a suspicious-looking door nearby. He told her to go inside. It was one of many paths that led to Underground Hall 13. It turned out to be an elevator, a hidden shaft that descended into the underground battlefield where the observation class was held. The professor turned to her. "Come to think of it, you've never been underground before, have you?" Sohyun admitted it was her first time. The professor smiled and said the academy used to be a tightly held secret. That's why most of its buildings weren't even visible on the surface. The true campus was buried below. As the elevator began descending, a cool blue light lit up the glass walls. Sohyun stared in awe. Outside the elevator, massive underground structures came into view. Towers, labs, training zones, sealed vaults. It looked like an entire city was hidden below the school grounds. She gasped. "This is a secret base, isn't it?" The professor replied. "Something like that." Sohyun couldn't stop asking questions. She wanted to know what was here, what was there, and what purpose it all served. The professor explained. Everything down here was dangerous. These were facilities and objects too unstable to be stored above ground. Mysterious magical tools with unpredictable powers. Areas corrupted by dungeon break influence. Monsters, terrifying ones, captured alive for research. And even secret zones that he himself wasn't authorized to enter. But none of that was reaching her. Because at that moment, Sohyun wasn't even listening. Finally, they arrived at a certain floor and stepped out of the elevator. At that floor, Sohyun quickly changed into a special uniform, one that only designated participants were allowed to wear in the observation room. As they began walking toward the battle hall, the professor asked her, "How's school life these days? Is anything difficult for you?" Sohyun replied that she still didn't make friends easily. She said Modan was her only real friend, though Purium and Woojin were nice to her too. And Sobin, well, she guessed Subin was almost nice, even though they weren't close. But aside from that, all the other students kept their distance. She sighed and said, maybe it was expected, especially after causing trouble recently. The professor asked, "Trouble? What happened?" Sohyun explained. Last time, she hurt someone she once considered a friend, and if something like that happened again, if she lost control again, she wasn't sure she could handle it. The professor gently patted her on the head. He told her not to worry. If he ever thought things were getting dangerous, he would step in to stop it. And he reminded her, her younger brother was here too. Sohyun looked up. Yes, that's right. The professor smiled and said, "What happened last time absolutely won't happen again. He'll make sure of it." Just then, he opened the door to the observation hall. Inside was a massive auditorium packed with students, all of them seated and waiting for the sparring matches to begin. As they stepped inside, Sohyun gasped, "There are too many people." Just then, Professor Iwara approached them. He looked at Professor Ji-hyung and remarked, "You're late, 1 minute and 42 seconds. But the professor didn't react. Instead, he walked forward, took the mic, and began speaking to the students. He said he wouldn't explain the full scope of the class again, since it had already been announced beforehand. This was the observation class. In this session, seniors and juniors would form tag teams and conduct sparring matches, 10 minutes per match. He explained the reason they were holding the event underground this time was because of the special sparring arena built here. He pressed a button on a control panel and suddenly, a transparent force field appeared around the arena. He pointed at it. This arena, he explained, was sponsored by UJ Matto Engineering. Every student wearing a suit was now connected to their individual status node. All damage taken inside the sparring area would be transferred directly to that node, meaning their real bodies wouldn't be harmed. To demonstrate, he suddenly punched Professor Iwara with full force. The students gasped, but Professor Iwara stood completely unscathed. Instead, the statue linked to him shattered instantly. The professor turned back to the crowd. In other words, he said, "You can fight at full strength, without fear of injury." But he reminded them, this was still a senior-junior mentorship class. No need to be too nervous. Of course, no one believed that. How could anyone not be nervous? This wasn't just a classroom match. This was a high-profile event. The big names of the hunter world were watching. Hunters from powerful guilds, top managers from hunter corporations, observers from industry guilds. Among them were the two most dominant guilds in the entire industry, Shining Star and UJ. From Shining Star, Guild Hunter Mr. Kang Ho, and Assistant Guild Hunter Mr. Tae Ho. From UJ, Hunter G1 and the highly respected Hunter Jin Wook. Mr. Tae Ho, attending the event for the first time, turned to Mr. Kang Ho and asked, "Why are we even here? Why are we spending time on some kid's class?" Mr. Kang Ho frowned. Since it was Tae Ho's first time attending, he let the question slide. He told him, "To your eyes, this probably looks like a simple match between seniors and juniors. But any perceptive student would realize, this isn't just an arena. This is a stage. A stage to showcase their strength to the industry. This is a field of opportunity." In other words, what they were doing here was talent scouting. Mr. Kang Ho turned to Mr. Tae Ho and said, "Watch every single match carefully. If you miss even one, you might lose a gem to those UJ bastards." Now that the students had heard everything from the professor, they began to look for opponents to spar with on the observation platform. Woojin scanned the area, wondering who to fight, but got distracted when he saw Sungyun. He noticed Sungyun walking directly toward one of the seniors. Without hesitation, Sungyun told the senior, "Let's spar on the observation ground." The surrounding students froze. Did he just challenge her? Whispers filled the arena. What the hell is he thinking? Doesn't he know who she is? Isn't that guy Sungyun the F rank? Is he out of his mind, challenging a returnee? The senior girl frowned at him without saying a word, then turned around and walked away. Seeing this, Subin ran up and yelled, "Hey, what are you doing? You seriously plan to spar with that returnee?" But Sungyun replied that he's serious. He's not one to joke with things like this. Everyone stared. Woojin walked up beside him and crossed his arms. "I don't know what kind of plan you've got, but you'd better do well. Because out of all the returnees, the one He-Won just challenged, she's actually the weakest." Sungyun's eyes widened. "What?" Woojin nodded. "That's right. That girl doesn't even use her returnee powers. She sealed them herself at the end of last year. She fights using only magical tools." "What kind of returnee seals their powers?" Sungyun muttered. Woojin replied, "Yeah, it's strange. But even without her abilities, she's this strong. That's exactly why it's bad news for you." And then the duel began. While other students fought, their matches were brief and not worth mentioning here, because they were side characters. Meanwhile, Sungyun stood across from the senior girl on the arena floor. He now understood. She used a sword, a bastard sword called Crimson Flame. It looked ordinary, but it had a unique trait called Massive Sword Chi. But unlike normal sword chi attacks that flew where the sword was swung, this one could launch a strike in any direction, front, back, left, right, up, or even down. It didn't matter which way the sword moved, the strike could go anywhere. That was why, even without returnee powers, she was dangerous. Sungyun muttered, "This is nuts." But still, he was more curious than afraid. Why would someone give up their abilities? He asked. Woojin, watching from the side, said she only started doing it near the end of last year. And the school began sponsoring that sword this semester. It's not just powerful, it's legendary. Sungyun scoffed. The school didn't even give him a stick to fight with. Woojin laughed. Then go borrow something from the magical tool storage, otherwise you're getting destroyed. At that moment, someone else walked up. Woojin glanced up. Huh? Soyeon? She nodded. Yeah. She's here to observe too, and she've already chosen who she'll spar with. Woojin raised an eyebrow. Already? Who is it? Soyeon said it's Minju. Woojin's jaw dropped. Is it the Minju he knows or a ghost? Soyeon smiled. Yep. Minju came up to her earlier and apologized. Said she was too harsh on the ship, and asked if they could pair up. Sohyun then said that she guessed Minju is not that bad once you get to know her. Woojin looked dumbfounded. Then that's not the Minju he know. He said Sohyun must have seen a ghost. Because the Minju he know is a sassy bitch who'd go to hell and back just to ruin someone. Meanwhile, Songyun stood at the edge of the platform, still wrapping his head. Do I really have to borrow a magic tool? He muttered. Woojin told him, well, that's left for him to figure out by himself. Just then, the professor's voice echoed through the hall. Now, we move to the second spar. The first match has concluded. Students Mo-Dan and Janil, please step forward. Mo-Dan's face lit up. It's her turn. But Sohyun's face twisted in concern. Wait, she's facing Janil? That huge guy? Mo-Dan turned to her friend and asked, is something wrong? Sohyun sighed. Well, Janil is terrifying. That guy can get really aggressive. But Mo-Dan told her not to worry. She won't lose to someone who bullies others. Now the two stepped toward the center table where weapons were to be registered. The professor instructed, place your weapons here. The system must sync their properties to ensure safety during the match. They followed the instruction. Weapon registration complete. Match begins in 1 minute, a voice announced. Mo-Dan and Janil took their positions and began light stretches facing each other. Janil looked at her and asked, you're Mo-Dan, right? She nodded. Yeah. He then raised his sword and asked with pride, do you know what this is? Mo-Dan blinked. Nope. Janil smirked and turned to the crowd. This sword right here is an exclusive prototype, an Echo Blade, provided by none other than the New Star Group. Even among the watching hunters, whispers erupted. One of the juniors leaned toward Mr. Kang-ho. Sir, did we sponsor that kid? Mr. Kang-ho raised an eyebrow. No. You've heard nothing about this. His gaze shifted to Minju, likely his daughter. So it's like that, Kang-ho muttered. Looks like this is her doing. Back on the stage, Janil continued bragging. This weapon is a precious item, scheduled to go up at auction in just a few weeks. Mo-Dan rolled her shoulders. Why is he talking so much about a sword? She muttered. Well, if he's using a sword, then he's likely a physical combat specialist. She recalled their lectures. There were 5 classifications of ability users based on their innate chi type. In the auto-awakening system, these classes were known as jobs. The first class? Physical combat specialists, essentially the warriors. Those who use swords in close-range combat tend to belong to this class. Their strength lies in enhancing physical power or transforming their bodies entirely. And rule number 1 when fighting a physical specialist, avoid close combat. Now the countdown hit 0, the fight has begun. Janil came at her full force. His swing cracked the air, but Mo-Dan blocked it clean with her fork. Janil's eyes widened. This little girl blocked his every strike without backing off. But he didn't slow down. He faked a right swing, diverted, and slammed a heavy blow to the side. Boom! The ground cracked. It grazed Mo-Dan's forehead, but thanks to the sparring system, it was her status statue that took the actual damage. Janil gritted his teeth and smirked. He launched another flurry of strikes, not even letting Mo-Dan breathe. His swings came faster and harder. Come on, man, this isn't a gym session. But Mo-Dan kept dodging with quick footwork. Her speed was clearly above average. Then, just as Janil raised his sword for another slash, Mo-Dan stepped to the side, spotted an opening and countered. She flipped her fork weapon and turned it into a spoon mid-air. Janil blinked in disbelief. What the hell? Mo-Dan didn't wait. She lunged. Janil snapped back with a zigzag step, trying to catch her off guard with his signature follow-up swing. But Mo-Dan had already predicted it. She was right at the edge, about to deliver a surprise strike, and then, a sudden flick in her movement. She pulled back. Something was off. Something unexpected was about to interrupt them. In an instant, Janil infused his sword with energy. It radiated with red light, then bang, it exploded and sent Mo-Dan flying. The whole students gasped. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. But to everyone's shock, Mo-Dan's weapon bounced the entire attack back like it was nothing. Turns out, her weapon is a spoon that reflects attacks. Janil blinked in disbelief. Wow, that's surprising, he muttered. She fights way better than she looks. Mo-Dan let out a dry smile. It's too early to be surprised, she replied. Now the real fight begins. In this world, close combat against physical combat specialists is something to be avoided, unless you're a special case. For example, summoners. Summoners can call forth their own armaments, and Sung Yun, our guy, is one of them. He summons Chain, an armament with a unique ability that, depending on the type, can close huge power gaps in a flash. Right now, Janil was sweating hard. He muttered to himself, she's tougher than expected. But when it comes to speed, he's got the upper hand. Then he glanced at his sword and froze. His sword had bent like paper. What the hell? He shouted. How is that even possible? But the moment he lost focus, Modan was already sprinting at him. "If you get distracted, you're finished," she said, and bang, she struck. But as they clashed, her weapon cracked and it looked like it could shatter at any moment. Janelle grinned wildly. If her hits are this light, he'll win at this rate. But Modan didn't back off. She kept charging, swinging her spoon again and again, forcing Janelle to block each attack with his bent sword. The pressure was relentless. He was being pushed backward, closer and closer to his limits, and finally, Modan's spoon landed a clean hit across his face. Janelle was blown backward several meters. He hit the ground, dazed. Despite using full power, he hadn't been able to land a solid hit. He looked down at his sword. It was already completely useless, bent and crumbling from her attacks. He reached for his face. It was soft, swollen like jelly. Then it hit him. He understood now. The spoon's ability, anything it touches turns soft like rubber or pudding. No matter how tough your body is, if it turns soft, one clean hit, and you're done. A softened area, if struck, would just collapse like pudding. Modan saw the look on his face. She knew it. He'd figured out the spoon's ability. And now that it was exposed, landing another clean hit would be much harder. Earlier, the sword bending like paper was just luck. And since Modan is a sorcerer who summons kitchen utensils, the power of a fork or spoon wouldn't be enough now. She needed a stronger utensil. But that's where her power had flaws. First, she can only summon one utensil at a time. Second, she has no control over what gets summoned. Even if she dismissed the spoon and tried again, she might get another useless one. And during that brief moment of switching, she'd be completely defenseless. Modan let out an anxious smile. Right now, she was cornered. No time, no options, too much to consider, and too little time to act. She closed her eyes, sighed, and muttered. As expected, there's no such thing as normal people here. But if only... She took a breath. If only the knife comes out, like last time. Modan remembered back when she was still in high school. Back then, for some reason no one could explain, she was always the target. People would throw things at her for fun, laughing like it was the most normal thing. But one day, something snapped. As they mocked her, a faint glow appeared beneath her arm. It was a knife, small and unstable. She couldn't control her abilities yet. But she stood up, and her eyes were empty. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She wanted to kill someone. She stepped out of the classroom, both hands gripping the knife tightly. The bullies were still laughing. One of the guys clenched his fist, preparing to punch her. But seconds later, chaos. Students ran in all directions, screaming. And there was only one reason Modan had stabbed him. The guy lay there, bleeding in a pool of his own blood. What can I say? They messed with the wrong girl. After the carnage, Modan came to her senses. Her eyes widened as she realized what she had done. Now, back to the present. Modan looked down at her hand. She muttered to herself, "That's right. This isn't high school anymore. This isn't a fight between ordinary people. This is a battle between ability users. If she hold back again, she'll lose." Even though the trauma of that moment still haunted her, she knew what she had to do. If she had to summon the knife again, she would. She and Janelle locked eyes. Janelle, on the other hand, knew his sword was finished. The once glowing blade now looked like soggy cardboard. He clenched his teeth. "I guess I've got no choice," he whispered. His body surged with mana. The air shook from the sudden pressure. "I'm going all out this time," he said coldly. Boom. With a burst of energy, his aura expanded violently. He glared at Modan and told her, "No matter how special your weapon is, if I keep destroying it, eventually your energy will run out." But Modan just smirked. "Oh really?" she said. "Then try and break this." She hurled her spoon straight at him. Janelle looked up. Wait a second, that wasn't a spoon anymore. It had transformed into a fork mid-air. He blinked. When the hell did she switch? He dodged instinctively, but something felt off. And then he noticed, Modan was gone from her spot. Just as the fork vanished mid-air, Modan appeared behind him. It was at that exact moment Janelle realized. He fucked up. Modan didn't hesitate. She had summoned the knife, the same one from her past. And it wasn't just any knife. It was her strongest weapon. With a clean arc, she slashed. Boom, the strike connected. But that wasn't all. The knife's ability was deadly. Once it lands a hit, it delivers a delayed second strike. A follow-up slash that comes from the same trajectory seconds later, like a double-layered execution. As Modan drove the blade through him, her face lit up. Turns out that Janelle's energy from his body enhancement blasted her face, and they both fell to the ground. In this world, mana arts is a technique that channels one's soul energy to summon soul-embedded armaments into reality. These weapons reflect the summoner's inner self and carry unique abilities. So when someone like Modan, with her unpredictable personality, summons something as dangerous as a knife, it's deadly. But just as her knife connected, Janelle also managed to land a heavy strike at the same time. The two clashed mid-air and were sent crashing to the ground with a thunderous impact. Moments later, the professor raised his voice and declared the outcome. The spar is over. The winner is Janelle. Some were surprised, but the explanation came quickly. Mr. Kang Oh, watching from the stands, commented, "That girl was impressive, but the power gap is still too wide. The damage she dealt to Janelle's statue was minimal. On the other hand, Janelle's strike shattered her statue's face entirely." Janelle cheered. He said he don't even know how he won, but he won, and that's what matters. He was still unsure how the fight turned in his favor. Modan sighed quietly and returned to her seat. She apologized to Sohyun for losing, but Sohyun smiled and shook her head. "Don't say that. You were amazing." Meanwhile, Woojin sat beside Sungyeon and muttered, "This must feel awful. The guy who insulted your sister just won." But Sungyeon replied, dead serious, "Not really. Janelle didn't win." Woojin turned to him. "What? How is that possible?" Sohyun explained. The professor told him earlier. Big guilds and companies are watching these spars. Winning doesn't matter. What matters is standing out. And if that's the criteria, then Modan clearly stood out more. She didn't hesitate against a stronger opponent. She used her speed, her armament's unique traits, and even manipulated the pace of the match. She managed to hide her weapon switch mid-fight, outplayed her opponent strategically, and showed everything she had. Janelle, on the other hand, only showed brute strength, and still struggled to beat a junior. "There's not a single guild that'll contact that guy," Sungyeon concluded. The entire conversation hadn't even been through telepathy, but the professor caught on to Sungyeon's sharp observations. Deep insight. That's what truly matters inside dungeons, adapting quickly when everything changes. That's the true goal of this class. Now let's rewind a bit. You might be wondering something, and you wouldn't be wrong. What if the new Star Guild had planned all this from the start? Think about it. Everyone here was free to show off. The room was packed with professional hunters. Companies had their eyes open. Customers, scouts, and major guilds were watching. Isn't that the perfect place to advertise? Janelle's constant bragging about his armament, his performance in front of everyone. Could it be that the new Star Guild handed him that sword to promote their new product during the spar? Well, yes. That's exactly what happened. This whole sparring ground, it wasn't some ordinary school arena. It was a specially sponsored facility, funded entirely by UJ Mato Industries. That's right. The entire setup was a promotional event in disguise, and a first year like Janelle was nothing more than a walking billboard. Of course, not many students knew that, except Sungyeon, who had been quietly digging for answers throughout the class. Just by observing carefully, he had pieced together the truth. Suddenly, Woojin looked toward the exit and noticed Janelle and Minjin walking off together. His eyes narrowed. Something was off. He quickly turned to Sungyeon and said they should follow them. He need to know what those two were up to. Sungyeon nodded and trailed after them silently. And just like that, one of the academy's biggest mysteries was about to be cracked. Now over at the hallway near the restrooms, Minjin was speaking with Janelle. Janelle looked annoyed. "What is it this time?" Minjin frowned. "Do you not remember what was written in the contract? You were only supposed to use Echo during the spar, that's it." Janelle raised his voice. "That sword bent like paper. How did you expect me to keep using it? I would have lost." But Minjin didn't flinch. She glared at him and snapped, "You idiot. You still think the point of the spar was to win?" Just then, a voice interrupted them. "Oh, she's right," Woojin said casually from behind them. "So what kind of plan were you cooking up this time?" They both froze. Woojin smirked. "You're the new Star Guild president's daughter, right? Should have known." Minjin had been caught red-handed. She couldn't even talk back. Just stood there, lips sealed, face blank like a stunned Pikachu. Woojin continued. "What were you two talking about? A little contract deal? Janelle promotes your gear, and you promise him a recommendation into the new Star Guild?" Janelle panicked. "Wait, no, that's not what happened." But then he muttered, "Although, a recommendation would have been a better deal." "Shut your trap," Minjin hissed. But Woojin burst into laughter, as expected. "So you weren't even planning to recommend him at all. And honestly," he added, "there's no way someone like Janelle would survive in the new Star Guild anyway." Which begs the question, what did the new Star Guild offer him in return? That's when Woojin paused. He thought back. Everything began to fall into place. Wait, this must be about Sohyun. Sohyun was involved in that incident with Janelle, right? All the puzzle pieces snapped together. This had never been about Janelle. It was about controlling Sohyun. And now, Woojin had every reason to dig deeper. The real story was only just beginning.